Welcome to the Murray City Budget and Finance Committee meeting for fiscal year 2021. Because of the current health pandemic, and in order to comply with the governor's directive to stay safe and stay home, and the public health order issued by the county health department and county mayor, we have determined that an in-person meeting, including attendance by the public and the council, is not practical or prudent. Therefore, this meeting will be held remotely through electronic means. Each person is participating from a separate location. We are totally dependent upon the internet and technology to broadcast this meeting and to ensure that the public has an opportunity to view the proceedings. However, there could be a malfunction that is totally out of our control. We do not expect any issues, but want you to be aware of that possibility. All members of the council are present and welcome. Wish I could see you guys in person, but I guess this is the next best thing. Today, the City Council is reviewing the mayor's tentative budget for fiscal year 2021 with department directors. If you would like to follow along, the complete budget can be found on the city website at www.murray.utah.org. Okay, we've got that. Okay, this is the second day, and as I mentioned, and the first person presenting will be Power Department, Blaine Hackey. Blaine?
Thanks, Diane. Thanks, Council. Everybody here okay?
Sure, sounds good.
I'm getting a little bit of feedback, but I'll keep going. So, like I say, our nerves are a little bit rattled based on what happened about 20 minutes ago, but I think we're okay. Thanks to Bruce for helping with that. But
what happened?
So
I'll talk to you after.
Okay. You okay, Brett?
I just said what happened, but I'll talk to you after.
Okay. We present a balanced budget. It's a $40 million budget. Ours is one of the bigger ones, if not the biggest one of the city. Our budget includes all capital expenses for the next year. It includes the transfer to the general fund of 8%, a little bit over 8%, and we'll go into that a little bit more later. It includes all the transfers of services charges to other city hall or other city departments, general fund. It includes all of our labor, and the biggest portion of our power budget is the power resource budget, and we'll go into that a little bit detail. That's the one we don't have a lot of control over, but yet it includes $21 million by itself. It's a big one. And then, of course, our O&M expenses. We intend to answer the questions that the council presented a week ago or so, but first I'd like to maybe outline our basic budget, and then you can ask questions, and then we can maybe answer the six questions that you posed. I want to acknowledge Greg Ballon, who's also here, as well as Bruce Turner, who are my senior management. They've also helped, I was going to say manipulate the budget, but formulate the budget, as well as Brenda has been involved with some projections. And so that's the budget we have. So we have, I'm going from page 109, between 109 and 117 of your packet is the power department budget, 109 and 117. On page 109, you see we have 49 full-time employees. Now, our capital budget has already been reviewed with Brett and Dale in the CIP committee. You can see where we have several items that are on our capital budget. It consists of replacements of a 1978 vehicle and a 1982 vehicle and two smaller vehicles. We also have over $500,000 budgeted for penstock repair. Now, penstock is the pipe that leads from our diversion, collecting water from Little Cottonwood Creek, and it goes down from the diversion plant in the canyon down several miles into our hydro that's down in the valley. And this penstock is it's close to 30 years old. and we need to put some big money into it this next year to repair it. We also have some money set aside in our capital budget for natural gas combustion chamber rebuild. So, like I said, Dale and Brad have already heard our spiel on that through the CIP committee, but I wanted to mention that just in passing, that we do have a sizable $1.6 million in our capital budget. Page 11, you can see our revenues. You can see that we get the majority of our revenues from metered sales. That's obvious, of course, I think, but there's also other ways that we get our revenue. You can see that our largest, I guess, source of revenue is our large commercial customers. This would be the big box stores, the mall stores. You can see we're close to $17 million, almost $18 million is expected of revenue from our large commercial customer. By percentage of meters, only 4% of our meters are large commercial, yet they give us close to half of our revenue. So we kind of pay special attention to the small meters, to the small people. We have a person assigned to take care of the Nordstroms and that type of thing because they are our larger customers. You can see residential revenue around $11 million, our small commercial around $5 million. About 85% of our revenue comes from metered sales. And we have other ways that we get revenue. One is from impact fees. You can see the line items for the impact fees, the connection fees. We get money from interest that we have in reserves. And we resell some of our energy and power to other members of UAMPS. And we get a revenue profit, you might say it. Maybe that's not the good word, but our margin on top of our sales for that. We take our best stab at the metered sales projections, and Brenda gives us a good idea historically what we do from year to year. It's really dependent on temperature. It really is. If we have a hot summer, it's good for metered sales, maybe not good for our own power bills at our own house, but a hot summer and a warm winter, or even a cold winter, makes a big difference on our metered sales. And so we take our best historical stab at our metered sale revenue, and just knowing full well that if the weather goes wacky either one way or the other, it's going to make a big dependent on our revenue. Now, the good thing about that is when we have to buy more resource during the summer for air conditioning load, that means we sell more, but we have to buy more. When we don't sell as much, we don't buy as much. So they're kind of dependent one upon the other. Very rarely will we buy more when we need to and sell less. So anyway, just we watch that as the year goes by. If it's a real hot summer, then we'll make changes to the budget. But usually they take care of itself because we buy less if we sell less. Page 112, you can see some of the increases that we have. We want to, in expenses, we want to put some decorative fencing around our 48 South frontage right here. We have some chain link fencing. I want to put some nice decorative fencing. You can see that building ground maintenance has gone up. I think it's close to $100,000 because of that and some other things. And you can see where some of the other line items have gone up and down. Nothing of real concern to us. In page 113 of your budget packet, we see we're going to have to increase some of the hydro maintenance, $250,000 to do some generator work. We are re-babbiting our internal metal units, and a babbitt is a thin metal sheath that we put on the inside of our operational units. It protects the components, and so we don't wear out the generator faster than we have to. That'll be a pretty large expense this next year. Page 114, you can see there's some slight increases in travel. Some line items, overhead materials of $800,000 is a big line item. Underground materials is $150,000, and traffic signal maintenance is $600,000. Those are the big line items on that page I wanted to mention. These are materials we use: poles, wires, conductors, switchgear. and we have to spend that money. In a lot of ways, Bruce keeps his guys busy by doing that. But it takes the big line items to do that. We also have a software contract with our SCADA. Now, SCADA stands for the supervisory, I'm not sure what it stands for, but supervisory acquisition of data or something. But we have software that goes and gets information from the different substations that are around the city. And this software, our guys are able to use and open and close breakers. They're able to watch load. They're able to do all kinds of things through the software. Now we're downsizing, or we're phasing out the old SCADA, and we're buying into a new SCADA. And so this software contract that we've had for years and years is going to go away. And so it'll be part year. So we kept it in there for this year. And you'll find out in just a minute when we answer the 6 questions that you posed that this will be one of the proposals of cost cutting for the part of the 4% would be the cost cutting of this software contract. So let's talk about resources. You can see page 115. We don't see any big increases or decreases in our resources. You can see the resources individually mentioned, the Hunter Project, which is the coal plant in Price, Utah, the CRSP, which is the federal hydro down at Lake Powell, the San Juan coal plant, the power pool, the power exchange, the 2 landfill plants that we buy energy from, and we also have, is it 350 or 250,000 for our natural gas fuel purchases. It's close to $21 million to buy power for the city, and that's about, simple calculation, it's about $1.8 million a month that we spend on power purchases. So over half of our expense budget is power. Most of it is through the UAMPS group, but we have those individual contracts that I mentioned that we're able to buy and sell and go in there. We don't expect any IPP callback this year. IPP is the plant out at Delta, the coal plant. The cost of that is too high. We don't expect to see any callbacks, or you would see something on our revenue. There's a little bit of the cost there to keep the contract going, but we're not going to go there for any resources. To get our resources, we do side deals, and that's what Greg and his group does. They do side deals with other UAMPS members. They will call up to individual cities in the UAMPS group and say, what do you have for sale? Or what can we sell you? It goes both ways. We also buy extra energy from our CRISP resource. It's called Western, the Western group. We're able to buy hydro that's pretty inexpensive. And also we'll approach the trading floors. We'll go into the I can't remember the names of them now, Greg, but we go into individual trading floors and try to buy a chunk of power, maybe even outside the UAMPS group. We don't have to go to UAMPS for everything. And so we will keep them honest, I guess you could say. That's not a good word either, but we will make sure that we get our best deal. So $21.5 million is a big line item. It's huge, but that's the cost of doing business. That's about it on as far as line items, as far as the packet from page 109 to 117 that you have. I did want to talk about the 6 questions you posed. We continue this next year to go into the Navajo reservation once things settle down there and do the service project perhaps next spring. That's budgeted inside of those line items. We intend to do the Arbor Day celebrations, the Fun Days help, the tree lighting ceremonies, public power 2021, and try to just try to keep business going as normal. So with that, Diane, that's my basic summary of the budget. I do want to talk about those 6 questions in particular, and maybe get Bruce's and Greg's input on a few things. Any questions for that?
Are there any questions on the power fund for the line items from the council? Okay, Greg, I have one on.
Sorry, Diane. Oh, do you want to go ahead and ask first?
No, you go ahead and then I'll ask.
Okay. So I had one question. When in the past, in your experience, when the economy is not doing too well, does purchasing power change? Does that cost go down?
Where during March, we saw a decrease of about 6 or 7% in sales. And I think we can pretty well figure that's part of the COVID thing. Businesses on Main Street closed down. So we saw 7% sales less, but we also saw 7% purchases less. So it's kind of a one-to-one deal. Right now, we are in a good we're a good purchaser. Our natural gas prices are about $1.30 a decatherm, which may not mean a whole lot, but that means that we can generate for really cheap. And so, more so, Rosalba, the issue is what is the market doing around the energy rather than the market with people using more or less electricity. When the natural gas prices are down like they are now, we can buy pretty cheap, and we're actually doing really well right now. Even though our sales are off, we're buying the energy on the spot market for a lot less money.
Thank you so much for that.
You bet.
Okay, Blaine, I have a question on page 111 on the write-offs. On the write-offs, you've got 50% change. Do you think it'll be more, or do you think that's a pretty good expectation in terms of write-offs?
Brenda, can you help with that one? She gives us that number.
I don't think it's going to be any more than that. Last year, total was 90,000. We are going to attempt to collect. So I can't imagine that the apartment dwellers that are going to leave and try and find a new apartment while they're still owing rent and stuff, it's not going to happen. We're going to collect a lot of it. $50,000 with the deposits that we have on the apartment dwellers. And we even have deposits on businesses. We take deposits on businesses that do not have an established credit and are renting space. So we do have a deposit bank out there that we can cover some of the write-offs if the business goes out of business. So I'm thinking 150 will be fine. We could make it 200. It doesn't affect him that much. His sales will go up and down. If they go over 150, then that just means that A, the general fund doesn't get as much transfer. He'll be happy about that. And B, that he's going to have to offset it with some other revenue source, will be up or down, and it will just go back into his fund balance. It'll either get pulled from his fund balance or go back into his fund balance. So I'm thinking 150 is probably going to be adequate. We won't know. Actually, it's going to take us about a year before we even attempt to write off some of these accounts. We send them to a collection agency before we actually write them off. So it's going to be a year or so before we know exactly what's going to happen. But we're going to collect them as hard as we can. And soon. We are already making collection calls, but we're not shutting anybody off. So we don't have the big stick right now. But people are making small payments wherever they can.
So Brenda, do you think that that number will increase the following year and probably the 22-23 budget?
We may have to increase it in the 2021-22 budget. We'll have to wait and see what our outstanding is at that point. Right now, total, our delinquent balances, all funds are $160,000 total. That's water, everybody. So 150 is pretty good. We're not going to write all of those people off. So.
Okay. Thank you, Brenda. I just want to make sure that we're prepared as we can be. I know this is the unknown, but let's see. And then the building and grounds maintenance. Blaine, on 112, was that what you were talking about? The new fence?
Yeah, 280 versus 125. We've
Yeah.
also got not only that fence, but there's some other upgrades we want to do to our area. But that's basically ground maintenance upgrade, fencing on different substations, some landscaping, that type of thing. The majority was, if I'm not mistaken, Bruce and Greg, maybe help me, was the fencing, as well as we were going to put some new signage up coming down 48 South. There's a big wall there going westbound that needs some type of signage. And I'd like to put a Murray Power sign or something there. And that's in the 40,000 range, that type of thing. So, yeah, Dan, to answer your question, that was the line item.
Are there any other questions for Blaine? Let's see, in the page 114 on travel and training, I guess you're going to be addressing that, though.
We will.
Okay.
We will.
All right. That's
All right.
my questions.
Thank you. Let's answer some of the questions that you posed, Dan. I've asked Greg and Bruce, who are basically the gurus of this budget anyway, to address, to answer some of your questions. I asked Greg to talk about what amounts are we going to be unspent this budget year. And then I'll have Bruce talk a little bit about overtime. Anyway, so Greg, are you prepared to talk about the answer to number one?
Yes. So just going through our budget, kind of went through the department, different divisions, and roundabout, it looked like we could possibly have unspent just over $800,000. And a lot of that's kind of out of our distribution area, backyard rebuilds, that type of things. But we felt like that's a rough guesstimate, but something that looks like we might have a little bit left over at the end of the year. I don't know if you want to talk about anything other than just kind of the general number there, but that's kind of going through. That's what we think we'll have, give or take.
Some of the money we have unspent, of course, is the travel training. There's, $30,000, $40,000 in some of those travel training line items that we're not going to use this year. The APPA conference has been canceled, and a lot of the other conferences that our GIS people are going to has been canceled. There's a couple professional services contracts that we're not going to pursue. For example, we don't think we need a cost of service study, which is usually done every 4 or 5 years. We're due to have a cost of service study performed, and that is a study that says, are your rates compatible with your expenses and revenues? And it kind of gives us a guideline as to whether our rates are right in line. We're not going to do that this year. Lots of supplies are not going to be spent. Some of the street tree costs came in less than we thought, the street tree program. So those are the items we're leaving on the table. $832,000. Like Greg said, most of it is in the backyard rebuilds, we call them, materials unspent. So question number two, Robin will take care of. As far as the CARES Act, we have had 2 employees, as she may mention, have been staying home and tending children. I'm not sure I think they're using their own sick leave and vacation. Bruce, do you know by hand? You don't know? We think that they're staying home and tending kids, but using their own sick leave. But Robin will give us a better idea. We have had 4 or 5 people tested for COVID, but luckily it came in negative. As far as number 3, the travel and certification requirements, we have a few people that need to continue with that. We have 2 apprentice linemen that are on a 4-year contract or 4-year plan. And after 4 years of training, they become full-fledged journeyman linemen. We have Justice and Tyler, who are both involved with that apprentice lineman. We have to keep that going. It's basically a contract with the city. it's only a couple $1,000s to keep them in their school. It's pretty rigorous. They have to come to work during the regular day, and then they go to school at night and on weekends, and they have to fill so many hours of transmission work and underground work and overhead work. And so we have to keep them going. To stall them, and that would be catastrophic to them and us as well. We also have some arborist training and certification has to keep going. Some pesticide licenses that have to keep going, keep active, and that's around $2,000. And we have some NERC certification. NERC stands for North American Energy Reliability Council, and that's what Matt Youngs from our staff does. And he needs to be certified for that and to keep that active. Otherwise, we get in trouble on the federal level with not keeping our relays in correspondence and in the right calibration. And that's around $10,000. And then the final thing is, well, I'm not sure if this is part of it, but I do have one employee that's pursuing an associate's degree down at Slick. And so that's a couple $1,000s as well. So, 10, 12, it's about a $16,000, $17,000 commitment for all of those things for us to keep our travel and certification requirements up and going. Now, question 4 was about the 4%. If we were to decrease our operations budget by 4%, what would we do? To get to that number, we had to realize that 8% of our budget or revenue goes to the general fund as it is. So, that's $3 million I didn't count in towards having to cut any. We also have our capital expenses and our power purchases. So we threw the power purchase portion of that out, the $21 million out of the $40 million budget, the $3 million expense to the ILOT, and the capital expenses. And it came up with a number around $7 million is our operations budget. That includes some of the stuff we just talked about, the backyard rebuild materials, as well as our labor. And 4% of that is about $278,000. So we set out, Greg, Bruce, and I, to find out where we could perhaps decrease our operations budget by $278,000. One item that we came up with was we intend not to have Public Power Week this year. It's going to be the first part of September. We haven't officially canceled the Public Power Week at the park, but that's a $20,000 item that we intend to not use, and we hope it's just a temporary. There's some stuff we can do, like give out power bucks and to do some type of things on the side. But as far as a park celebration, I don't see us doing that. Even if we go to a yellow phase, when we have 400 or 500 people at the park, I just don't think it's going to work that way in September. But we'll use some of that money to maybe give some power bucks away and do some type of thing. So there's $20,000. We intend to decrease some of our engineering costs, $13,000 for a professional line item. We were going to do a rate study this next year, and we're going to take that out, as well as a customer service study. We do those about every 4 or 5 years, where we actually randomly hire a third party to come in and find out, what do our citizens know about us? What do they want from us? Do they know we're a municipal power system? Or do they think we are just a subset of Rocky Mountain Power? And it's been several years since we've done that customer service study. We were going to do one this next budget year, and that's part of that $13,000 savings that we will not do, or at least we'll wait and see what the budget does next year before we have to do that. Bruce, on the next one, can you take the signal, just because you're familiar with the traffic signal maintenance and the dielectric testing that we're going to cut? Tell them a little bit about that, if you could, Bruce.
Yeah. So I talked with Trace Stokes, and between the two of us, we figured out that we could cut that traffic signal budget by about $200,000. There's some signals that don't need changed out that he has scheduled to be changed out this year, but we'll put those off until a later date. So that went from $600,000 down to $400,000. And
then the dielectric testing on the boom trucks. That was a $15,000 item or something like that.
Yeah. That one we have to do it every year. I've got a budget of $40,000, but I talked to the company that's going to come in and do it, and they're going to reduce their charges because they're having so many companies cancel. So they will come in and do it for about $10,000 less, but we have to have our trucks and the equipment the guys use. They're called hot sticks. We have to have those tested every year, or if something happens, then we're in trouble. So.
Thanks, Bruce. So with those items, as well as the software contract with our dispatch that we're not going to renew, that's a $25,000 item. That's the third-party contract that we're doing away with that software and putting a new SCADA in at the first of the year. All those total up to $278,000. So we feel like we can do that. A little bit of growing pains on our part, but we'll see how the year goes. So that's our 4%, close to $278,000.
Council Member Turner, may I make a comment here?
Sure.
So like we discussed yesterday with the Water Enterprise Fund, the Wastewater Enterprise Fund, the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund, the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, the Power is also an enterprise fund. So I just want to make it clear that cutting the Power Department budget or any enterprise fund budget does not help the general fund. So, and I'm not telling you that you can't cut it. If you want to do it, you can do that. But the money collected, the revenue collected for the enterprise funds comes from rates. It doesn't come from sales tax. It doesn't come from property tax. It comes from rates. And the mayor can share his opinion on this, but we do not believe that the rate revenue is going to go down because of the COVID impact on the economy. People are still going to pay for power. They're still going to pay for water. They're still going to pay for their garbage. So cutting the enterprise fund budgets, in our opinion, does not help the general fund. And the only thing that we can anticipate that could happen with the enterprise funds is that people will not pay their bills. And Brenda has already addressed that. So again, it's your prerogative if you want to cut the enterprise funds by 4%, reduce their travel and training, take away their overtime. That's up to you as a council, but from our perspective, it doesn't make sense from an economy perspective. So I just want to make sure that you, particularly our new council members, Kat and Rosalba, that you understand that these are separate funds from the general fund. And as you're contemplating these reductions, keep in mind that if you cut the power fund budget, for example, let's just say that we don't do those traffic signals, then the money is going to be unspent at the end of the year because their revenue is still going to come in. And that money that's unspent is going to go into their reserves. And so what you have at the end of the year is you have projects that are not being done, and all you're doing is putting the money from those projects into the reserves to be used for future years. So I just want to make that clear.
Thanks,
I think
Doug.
my biggest concern, sorry. So
Okay.
just to follow up from what Danny had said, or Doug said, is if rates, let's say, we can't predict what's going to happen with rates or what's going to happen with the economy, but right now we already kind of know it's going to be in a slump. So whether or not we take away or don't take away or have a reduction by 4% for each enterprise, either way, the money could not be coming in at that amount as we predicted, or as what you're saying, Doug. So I would like to look at all the enterprise funds and see what happens, and that way we can better prepare. And personally, being new or not, it still is something that I think we should look at for our citizens as well as each other. So thank you.
Thanks, Rosalba. Also, we're going to put that on our contingency, so we'll discuss that on Friday. And I am aware of the function of the enterprise fund, so thank you. Blaine?
Yeah, one more item, maybe one more mention, Rosalba. We have reserves, and most enterprise funds, if they're good ones, are in the black and they have reserves. And that serves as a buffer sometimes with the rate problems you might have. Let's say we do have a high rate or a low rate. People aren't buying as much. We do have a little bit of a buffer. We used that back in the 2001, 2002, back when there were, I think it was close to $16 million in reserves. And that's when the Enron debacle hit, and when there was a lot of manipulating going on in the Western grid. And there was high price power, astronomically high price power. And, Murray went through $3 or $4 million more a month than they had expected because of the manipulation that went on. And at that point in time, the Murray City dipped into those reserves to help preserve the rate until we could recalculate, and we could go back to the council with some type of rate modification. So I think that's what Doug said, is there's a value in having reserves in the bank, because you have to react to things pretty fast and then backtrack and then do some type of policy changes to make it happen. So luckily we have some reserves that we can fall back on. So the last thing we have, if there's no questions, that is the overtime. I think I saw a graph where Power Department has the second highest overtime of the city, with Fire Department being number one. You have to understand that we are a power department that's 24/7. We have continual callback possibilities with our employees. We can't wait till 8 in the morning to restore power. And as Rosalba knew a couple months ago, when she called me, you didn't call me at 1 in the morning. When you texted me at 1 in the morning, said, "Hey, I've got some outages happen." It happens. It happens at 2 in the morning. It happens at 4 in the afternoon. And so we have somebody on continual standby all the time. Outside of our regular 8-hour day, we have a lineman, a sub-tech, an arborist, and a warehouse person on call, on standby, we call it. And we give them partial payment, partial wage for carrying the pager. And so they have to respond immediately when we call them. We just don't think with electricity the way it is that we can let people stay 4 or 5 hours without power. So it comes at a cost, though. We're also on call for emergency blue stakes and other department activities and call outs, bad storms, snow removal. Those types of things are overtime responses to us. Our present overtime budget is $285,000 a year. And we feel that we can cut that, if the council wants us to, by about $19,000 to $20,000 if we did not do a public power night, if we cut back on some of the Arbor Day and Fun Days celebrations, as well as tighten up a little bit on maybe some of our optional call-outs, like maybe calling 2 linemen instead of 3 linemen to fix a problem. So we figure we can cut that by about $20,000 to $266 from $285 if the council so thought. But for the other one, we're pretty well there unless we stop putting people on call. And with that comes down the reliability. And as you know, we want to be 99.999% reliable. Or is that, Brett, you smiled, is that 5 nines or 6 nines?
I'm just laughing because I'm thinking about that figure. By the way, I didn't know we could text you at 1 a.m. in the morning. I can't wait.
Luckily, I was awake. But when I responded to Resolve 45 minutes later, she didn't respond back. So I think she went to bed.
I did. I was trying to figure out how to text all of you guys, but I had emailed you. I had citizens calling me and texting me, which is sad when you have friends that are your.
Yeah. Let us know. Let us know. We're trying to do more Facebook postings and those types of things to get the word out. But Diane, I think that's our presentation for the most part. We do have the capital budget, but Dale and Brett already know about that. But we're welcome to answer any questions. Bruce and Greg are here. Brenda.
Hey, what about discussing any concerns that you guys have? How are things going?
We're doing great. You say concerns. We're concerned about the step raises a little bit. I mean, about half of my employees are in that 12-step plan, and we would sure like to see that keep going. Enterprise fund, as Doug mentioned, is a little bit different animal than general fund. We have close to $50,000 that we would have set aside to pay for our people's step raises, if that were called upon. So we can handle it as an enterprise fund. We would like to see that go. Greg, Bruce, do you have any comments or questions? I think we're happy to be here and happy to be employed.
Okay, thank you. And are there any questions from the council? Any further about the power department? It's good to hear from Greg. Haven't seen him for a while.
He was in quarantine for a while.
Oh,
Just want
really?
to say,
Diane, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Blaine, what happened in the 2002 recession to your revenues? Since we're probably entering one, and 2008, I wasn't here. So I don't know what happened with the power company. Did we have lots of write-offs? What happened with that
You know what?
particular recession?
That's the year I was named general manager. So I was oblivious to anything that was happening. We had a finger in the dike, but I can go back and find out. We've been stagnant ever since 2008 as far as growth goes. I mean, even every year we're 1% or less. Up to that point, we were 2 or 3% increases on revenues. And the 2008, 2009, we have not grown hardly at all. In fact, we've gone down a little bit in some of our peak loads. I don't know if we're still seeing remnants of 2008, but we haven't hit back to the pre-2008 era at all. I can research that a little bit more, Brenda, if you want.
I was just curious. I think what you're seeing is LED lights that everybody's changing out to LEDs and fluorescents, and they're conserving.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And I think we've seen that more so in December, when our Christmas lighting load isn't as drastic as it has been.
So you've stayed steady.
We're staying steady. We're level.
Thanks.
Air conditioning is our big load. We like air conditioners.
Okay, Jan, also, would you put the power transfer on the contingency list? Or maybe you already have. Okay,
no, I'll add it.
okay, great.
No, the power transfer, remind me, Diane, the power transfer, what we're putting on for.
Okay, that's just to decide if we're going to do a power transfers
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks, Diane.
on Friday.
Okay.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, I guess we're done with power. So,
You have a question?
oh, sure,
Or
of course. For power or which?
Kat, did you have something to say?
Oh, no, I was going to say just a minute ago that I just appreciated the breakdown of the overtime. I think that there was some misunderstanding for not specifically Blaine or Power, just in general, of that we wanted to cut all overtime or we thought it was not necessary. And I just wanted to assure department heads and the community in general, just that we understand that power is 24/7, that police and fire, there's a reason there's overtime there, right? Is there's not off time in the way there is for other jobs or departments. But just that our goal is to look at it strategically and to see where we can cut back where possible, and that sometimes it won't be and sometimes it will. And just as we're going through the departments, it's been interesting to see, I think, things like Fun Days or Arbor Day celebration and the Power Days celebration, where they're going to kind of eliminate themselves naturally as part of this emergency time. And then we'll cut back costs related to it. So maybe that will help as well, though we'll all be sad not to have those celebrations this year.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you,
Thanks for all
Blake.
you do.
Yeah,
Thank you.
really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, take care and be safe. Okay, let's see. Now we're at community and economic development. And I don't think we'll do the redevelopment agency, Melinda. I think we'll wait and do that when we have the RDA meeting. Okay,
Great.
Melinda?
That's on the budget for next week's meeting. So that
Great.
sounds great.
Okay, so community and economic development, welcome.
Thank you. So I was going to just share my screen and go through each of my divisions. I have 3 divisions. The first one I'll go through is the community and economic development division. So this is the parent fund for my departments. We have 2 employees. It's myself, and then we transitioned last year the office administrator supervisor over to business analyst position.
Melinda, that's page 36, right?
Correct. Yes, that's page 36.
Okay, just checking. Thank you. Go ahead.
So we really only had a couple of changes in this budget from last year's budget. You can see it's really all it is salary and supplies and travel. We have changed the contribution that we make to the Chamber of Commerce to go through non-departmental expenses rather than coming out of this fund. And then we increased the cell phone allowance to allow for Jay to have a small stipend for using his cell phone for business. So that's, again, a pretty simple, straightforward budget on this one. The building division is next, and this one is page 37. So we did have a couple changes here with staffing I wanted to point out. The development services manager, I know the mayor's mentioned this, that position was eliminated in January. We also in this budget have proposed eliminating the part-time plans examiner position. So that's a position that plans examiners and building inspectors actually have been very difficult to fill. So we were fortunate enough to be able to get someone to come in 2019 and work part-time. And then when they moved on, we were able to hire a full-time plans examiner. So that's the change there. So there's actually in this next year's budget quite a bit of savings here between the elimination of both of those positions. The rest of the budget in the building division is, as you would expect, it's the salaries. It's we have a uniform allowance for our inspectors. We will not have a car allowance anymore in this year's budget, as that was associated with the development services manager position that we eliminated. We do have books and subscriptions. This is used every year to purchase books and items that are published through the ICC. And if there's updates or changes to the code, we have to pay for all of those books and publications. So we have travel and training, and I can go over this a little bit more in detail after we go through the two other funds. But the training, we do have most of our employees, the 6 out of the 7 really do have to have by law certifications and licensures. And so we use that travel and training budget to ensure that they are able to attend the classes and get the CEUs that are required to maintain their certifications. We also have asked for I'll scroll down to the summary here, but we have asked for a small increase to the small equipment line up here. And that's for a couple different purposes, but one is we needed to get a new copier this year, and the annual maintenance costs on that is going up slightly. So both the building and the planning division needed to have a small increase in that line item. It is very nice to have a working copier, I'll tell you. And then we also increased the professional services line item up here for to account for the additional expenses that we've had this year, bringing in those consulting inspectors to help out with some of the vacancies that we've had in the building division. So again, this budget is pretty straightforward. And then the planning division, I think, is also fairly simple. Oh, sorry, one other thing I did want to point out too on the building division is this is one of the general fund budgets that actually produces revenue for the city. So last year we issued about 1,000 building permits and brought in about $2 million in revenue. So that revenue that we bring in is intended to cover all of the costs associated with the building division, the salaries, all of the expenses for providing that service. Planning and licensing also is one of the divisions that creates revenue for the city. We last year renewed had about 4,000 business licenses that were issued and brought in about $750,000 in revenue for this division as well. So the vision, we have a small staff here. We've got our planning supervisor, a couple of planners, our business license specialist, and then the office administrator position. We had a retirement in February, and the business license specialist retired. We promoted our office administrator position or employee to fulfill the business license specialist, and this office administrator position has been vacant since she started in March. Again, this is a very straightforward budget. We have our salary and our personnel. We have a uniform allowance for our code enforcement inspector that is out in the field. We do have a car allowance for one employee. The rest of this is, again, just your regular line items associated with each of the departments. And then the summary at the bottom, 2 items to point out. Again, we have moved the Chamber of Commerce to non-departmental, and then the ADC Utah contribution is moved to my department. We have increased the weed control budget right here from $4,500 to $6,500. And in short, we had to change contractors. The individual who was doing the weed control for us previously is no longer available to do that. And we were getting a really great price from him. So we have found that the weed control budget has needed to go up. And then again, the small equipment on this line item has gone up just a little bit to account for that copier that we needed to have. So with that, unless you have any questions on those, I'll start addressing some of the questions that you had from your memo.
Melinda,
Yeah.
I have a question. What is EDCU?
EDCU is the Economic Development Corporation of Utah. They are closely affiliated with the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and they have some great services that are provided to us as in exchange for that membership fee. One example is last year, the collateral that we passed out down at the Recon conference in Las Vegas was produced by them. So we didn't have to go out and hire our own graphic designer and get all of those documents produced. So that is an annual contribution that we give to them in exchange for membership and services that they provide.
Thank you. Other questions for Melinda on her budget?
I have a question. Do we, listed on the general fund, does it say specifically how much revenue we're receiving from planning and building? Or is that something that's just calculated together? Or
If you run down the revenue lines in the general fund revenue tab, it lists, and you can tell by just looking at what the planning says, building permits, planning fees. I don't have them subtotaled by that. I think we usually just group them by fees for services when you start talking in total. On that, the monthly sheet or the quarterly sheet that I sent out to you on Melinda's department, it does list her stuff at the top. I think I sent that a couple of weeks ago, and I will send you a new one once we close April. So you can tell by just reading down the revenues which ones are hers. If you have any questions about something that you don't quite know, just let me know, but they're grouped all together in their account numbers.
I was just curious, have you seen an increase, Melinda, in your revenue?
So we have actually, over the last few years, we have seen a trend of an increase of about 4 or 5% annually. Obviously, this year, I don't think that will happen. It's, remains to be seen how our budgets are impacted. But it has been essentially a continuous increase each year for a number of years in both of those, the licensing fees and the building permit fees. I should also mention that the planning and zoning applications also produce about, I think it's about $20,000 worth of revenue per year as well.
I hope it's 40 because that's what I budgeted. There is a subtotal under licenses and permits for her. I did decrease some of their budgets. One of the things is you just do not know what permits are going to do, so you don't want to rely on that revenue. So that's why I dropped it down, just to better reflect what may happen. Nobody has a clue. So just like everything else. But I have dropped most of her line items down.
Yeah, I think that's wise because two things. Murray's running out of property and we have the coronavirus, so nobody knows how that will affect us, but we are running out of ground quickly.
That's what they keep saying. They've been saying that since 2011, and we keep seeing increase in building permits. So eventually we're going to run out of property.
All right.
A lot of the building permits are tenant improvements and commercial commercial remodels. So, that should continue. But I will say that the couple months worth of numbers we've been able to produce since the coronavirus impacts started have shown a downward trend in the revenues for both business licensing and building permitting, which is what we would expect to see.
Okay, Melinda, now if there are no more questions for Melinda regarding her budget, then we can go to the questions that we asked you to answer.
Sounds great. So the first question was about the unspent funds for fiscal year 2020. And I expect in 1301, the Community Economic Development Fund, to have around $20,000 worth of savings. Some of that is due to the fact that we had the full-time business analyst or economic development specialist position in the budget from July 1st, but that position wasn't filled until December. So there's some small salary savings there. And then as far as the rest of the line items, the non-personnel, I'd anticipate the savings to be around, or the unspent to be around $4,200. The building division has also had some vacancies, and we anticipate, including all the personnel costs that will not be spent, the savings in that division will be about $77,000. If you take all of the personnel away and just count the operating expenses, there should be about $2,100 left that will not be spent. And then for the planning division, we estimate through the entire fund that there would be $63,000, give or take, left over, and about 15 or 14,000 of that will be from operating costs. We, again, in the planning division, we have had the employee who retired in February and a promotion and then a position that has been left vacant. So there will be some salary savings in that division as well. And we have held off on filling that office administrator position, who really serves as a backup to the business licensing, out of concern with the budget and the impacts from the COVID-19. We've been able to kind of, work around that, especially while we've been closed to the public. But we're working on getting the planners cost-trained on assisting with those business license services, so that if we're not able to fill the position in the future, anytime soon, we can still keep up with that service. Any questions on that one?
No, we appreciate your being so conservative fiscally. We really do appreciate that. So keep it up.
You're welcome. So number 2, I understand that Robin's going to address in more detail, but thankfully we have not had any employees in my division test positive. Had a couple of employees who were tested, and it was kind of frightening for a few days, but thankfully we've been okay with that. The training budget, so what I'll address next. So again, with the 3 divisions being broken up, the CED division with myself and Jay has $2,000 in that line item for travel and training. We do not have any certifications or licensures that have to be maintained or that require CEUs. I think in general, training opportunities are going to be very limited over the next year, and probably will be held via webinar and those type of things. So I don't, anticipate that there would actually be a whole lot of opportunities to spend some of the travel and training money. But that's the rundown in 1301. In 1306 for the building division, we have $7,000 lined out for training and travel. And again, this division would be a tricky one to eliminate any of that. I have 3 building inspector positions, 2 others that are certified as plans examiners and building inspectors, and then we have a an individual who's got some permitting and other certifications. All of those are required by law. You have to have the certifications and then be licensed through the Department of Professional Licensing with the state to be able to review plans and go out and do the building inspections. So that's really a critical area for us with building division, and one that just would be really difficult to cut back on. And then the planning division, 1307, they have 9,500 set aside for travel and budget, and that would include anything for code enforcement, business licensing, and planning. The only individual in that division that is required to have a certification is the business license specialist, and that's required by job description. The best way to get that certification is to attend the Utah Business License Association trainings sessions that they have each year. And it would take 2 years of attending those to be able to get the hours required for that certification. So since Priscilla is newly promoted to that position, she doesn't have any of those certifications. And so we would like to leave some opportunity for her to be able to work towards getting that license certification, or the certification that's required by her job description. Other than that, again, I think training opportunities will be limited. We had some staff scheduled to attend the National Association of Planning, American Planning Association conference that was canceled last minute. We usually try and send one employee to the national conference each year. Who knows what the future holds as far as those meetings. But there would be, I think, some opportunity there for some significant savings, just I think through limited opportunities. Do you have any questions on the training?
Any questions from the council for Melinda on training or travel?
May I ask a question, Diane?
Yes.
So you said significant savings. What does that mean dollar-wise?
Well, again, it's hard to say, not knowing what opportunities would be available, but I would think there's going to be limited opportunities, and probably even half or more of that budget could be eliminated. The attendance to the UBLA conference each year is about $1,200. So that would be kind of the bare minimum that we would need.
So $1,200 is what needs to be left in that, or?
Yeah, if the intention was to only allow any opportunity for licensed specialists.
Okay. And would that be included in your 4% or in addition to that?
So let me go through each of those areas, and I'll get to that if that's all right, Council Member Turner. In the 1301, the Community and Economic Development Fund, the operating costs, to achieve a 4% reduction, we need to eliminate about $800 worth of expenditures. And I think that would be possible through eliminating some of the expenses and the dues and memberships, travel and learning, supplies, and miscellaneous. And with a reduction of about $200 in each of those line items, I could achieve that $807 savings in the 1301 fund. In the building division, the operating expenses are just under $120,000. 4% reduction would require us to save or eliminate about $4,700 worth of expenses. Again, this is a pretty difficult one to accomplish that in, just because there's really no projects or any type of things that we can delay until next year, that type of thing. So I would suggest in that line item that we reduce the travel and training by half and leave 3,500 in there. I think that could be doable if the training opportunities were all in state. I don't really foresee out-of-state travel happening real soon anyway on that. So a lot of these classes are provided locally within, along the Wasatch Front. So I think the mission of getting the training needed could be accomplished staying here locally and even with limited funds in there. The supplies, I think we could probably be pretty cautious with spending supply money and reduce that by about $1,500. That brings us to a total savings of around 5,000% on that. And then 7, planning. Again, it's a kind of a tricky one when all you have is, minimal operating costs and personnel. The operating budget is about $85,000. And so 4% reduction, we need to eliminate about $3,400 worth of expenses. So I would propose to reduce the travel and learning line item by $500, the miscellaneous item by $88, and then the professional services line item to take the bulk of that and reduce that by $2,800. The professional services line item is one that we pay the match grant for our transportation local connections through Wasatch Front, like the Fashion Place West plan that we're working on. We pay those fees out of the professional services. We don't have any of those small area plans for next year, but we also use that line item to pay for analysis that we have to conduct when residential treatment facility centers come in and apply for their business license in the city. So we don't really have a way of anticipating how many of those applications for the residential treatment facilities that we would get. So we do need to leave some funding in that line item, but I think we can eliminate, $2,000-3,000 out of there safely.
And what would the total be then for that?
With those that I mentioned, the 500 from travel, the miscellaneous $88, and then professional services by $2,800, that brings a 4% total of $3,380.
Okay. Okay, now analyze overtime.
Okay, so easy 1301 does not have any overtime budget for that fund. The building division 1306 has $4,000 budgeted. This one isn't so straightforward or easy. Now we have 2 building positions that are vacant, and our third and remaining building inspector has been allowed to accrue overtime to make up for the, the deficit of being 2 employees short. We are also using our professional services contract with WC3 to supplement and augment staffing for those inspections. The tricky part is we don't know how long we may go without being able to hire building inspectors. If the council is not aware, over the last 5 to 7 years, the building inspector and arena has become very challenging for cities to hire and retain employees. So it's essentially come down to there used to be, I think, a lot more building inspectors in the trade. A lot of them have retired, and the trade just hasn't been resupplied with younger individuals that are coming into the profession. So we've had one of our positions listed vacant since March, and we've only received 6 applications, and didn't feel like any of them would be a good fit. So, on this line item, to say where we're at with overtime is very difficult, because we have to provide inspections, and I think there's a good chance that we may even go over this line item next year due to just the vacancies and the necessity of providing those services. The planning division, 1307, we have $4,000 budgeted in that fund as well. This is we really don't have much of a need at all for overtime in this budget. Our code enforcement and our associate and assistant planners are all hourly, so they do attend evening meetings with Planning Commission, and we try and flex those hours out, and they're generally successful with that. So we monitor that pretty closely and generally don't have any overtime, but those have been some of the needs in the past with that. And there was also some overtime that was approved in that line a couple of years ago when the Munis transition took place. So the business licensing, who at that point in time, that was only a 3/4 position. So if she spent extra time with the transition, that's where some of that funding came from. So I see a pretty minimal need in the planning division for overtime.
Great. That's helpful. Thank you.
CIP projects is also very simple. We don't have any planned CIP projects right now. I think we will, probably not next fiscal year, but the following year, need to replace one of the building inspection vehicles. But that's one that we can even obtain a used vehicle from the power department or another department. Again, that's an easy one. There's really no opportunity for us this year to have any savings or put projects off. And then Councilmember Turner, if it's all right, I'll just go on to the other concerns.
Yes, please do.
Thank you. So in general, I do have several concerns. And one is just that, I feel very strongly about the fact that when you come into budget difficulties, I think the easiest place and the most often place where cuts are made is the training and travel budgets. And I think that in the long run, that can create a lot of dissatisfaction among employees that I feel like when you have opportunities to go and learn about new materials, go and interact with your colleagues, that's really what brings kind of a motivation and lights a fire underneath employees. And so I'm hoping there still would be some opportunities to have training sessions attended at least locally if they're held, or again, virtually. But I've truly felt over the years that those opportunities help keep morale higher when times are pretty difficult. Let's see. The other thing I wanted to mention is again, we have left a position in the planning division unfilled, which is that admin position that serves as a backup to the business license specialist. We actually were very grateful. We had an employee that came and assisted us for about 10 hours this last week or so to help us keep up with filing. But I fear, especially reopening up to the public, it's going to be very difficult for us to keep up with all of the work in that position with just one person. So that's one of the concerns I wanted to mention. And then with the building division, again, I want to just reiterate the importance of them being able to maintain their certifications and licensures. But, we had, going back to the difficulties that are just in general with pretty much every city across the board in hiring building inspectors, we lost one of our employees to South Salt Lake, and they offered a 4-year, an inspector with 4 years of experience, substantially more money to come and work for them. And it was something that in the end we felt like we just couldn't justify to pay a very young and newly experienced inspector, the rate of a step 11 or 12 on our step and pay scale, which actually brings me to another issue. But the merit raises, I think, are very important, and especially in a situation like this where, it's very difficult to hire building inspectors. And if we're to start freezing salaries, that creates even more of a deficit between what other cities may be paying their building inspectors, or what they may be willing to pay their inspectors, and would create even more of an issue as far as pay. And then again, I'm with the 2 positions being vacant, we'll be using the professional services fund to augment the vacancies, but I do have concern about our remaining employee workload and burnout without having the ability to replace those inspector positions. And I think that undoubtedly it is absolutely critical that we get one of those positions hired. We don't have right now on staff, as far as an inspector anyway, someone who is certified to do the commercial building inspections. The inspector that we have here now is an inspector 2, and he has the residential inspection certification, but not the commercial. So we're hoping that going forward, we would be able to find someone to fill that position. But then just the last concern would be, I think over the last few years, the city's worked very hard to put in place that merit raise position and the performance increases. And I've heard some discussion about, if that's an area where savings could be found. And, I just expressed the concern that really does impact the morale of employees, and one that I think Murray's well positioned right now, where we're at And I'd hate to see us become less competitive in the future if that was something that weren't to be funded. But again, it's a very difficult time right now and just a lot of unknowns. So it's a challenge for you all to try and figure out exactly where to go from here with the budget.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. But as far as the travel and training, let me just address that because I'm a very strong proponent for travel and training for staff, and I think it's really important. And in a world that's not so crazy as it is now, and we have no idea what we're really up against. I think that we need to be very cautious. And so, if after we find out that this is not as big a problem as we're concerned that it is, maybe we can reinstate some of that. But at this point, I think it's really important that we make sure that we're able to maintain jobs and make sure that we're able to provide the services that we need to at this point. So anyway, you're right. This is not an easy time, darn it. But thank you. We really appreciate all your help with that. Council, are there other questions for Melinda?
Yeah, if I might. I agree with Melinda 100%. The other department heads on the step increase. The problem I'm having is trying to find a way to fund it, because when the mayor's budget the first year I was a councilman, the step increase came in, and we knew that we would have to have a tax increase in the third year, if not small tax increases second and third. We're in the third year, which was the drop dead date for, if I understood it correctly, for a tax increase, and we can't do that. And I really don't see a tax increase next year as well. Property tax I'm talking about. Our sales tax is down. It's going to go down, and I want to find a way to fund this. So maybe, by the end of this session, or maybe on Friday, if the mayor and Brenda can make me feel comfortable, we've spent by the end of the next, the end of this budget, the 2021 budget, we will be well through maybe half to 3/4 of our reserves with no increase in revenue on the foresight. So let's find a way to do this, but we've got to be able to do it in a way that is fiscally responsible, and a year or two down the road, we don't have to do other more drastic changes. So put that in the back of your mind. Know that we don't want to not give the raise. We just need to find a way to fund it.
And
Yes.
Melinda, I wanted to also express on the inspector. Absolutely, I've heard a lot of comments and compliments about Murray City, but concerns about delay in inspections. And so I appreciate you bringing that up. I think that'll be huge. But they were not complaints; they were just concerns about wanting to get those inspections done. So I totally agree that would have to happen. So thank you.
And it's also worth noting, if I believe we will see more slowing in the building inspections, but we really haven't the last couple of months as much as you would have anticipated. So we've been able to keep up with, with the limited staff that we have available, but having that commercial inspector is critical for us, and hopefully we can just find the right person to bring in for at least one of those positions.
Any more questions or comments for Melinda? We're right on time, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions for Melinda, then we can go to Chief John Harris of the Fire Department. John?
Hello, how are we doing? I was having a little problem with audio before. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
We could hear you great yesterday.
Yesterday. What happened yesterday?
You bled on the call.
Oh, I know. I know. So my apologies for that as well.
We knew that we had to tell you quick, just in case anything was said. Just kidding.
Yes. I was hoping somehow you didn't know that was me. Anyways, sorry about that.
Well, Chief Harris, welcome. And let's see, let's start going. How do you want to work this? Do you want to answer the questions first, or do you want to go over your budget? What's your pleasure?
Well, let's start off with just maybe a brief overview, and then I'll dive right into the questions, if that works okay.
Perfect. And if you would also tell us the pages that you're on when you go to your budget.
Okay. Well, my budget's on page 45, 46, and 47. I'll also tell you, I have my executive secretary, Laura Lloyd. She's sitting in the office with me. And I also have, I believe, I can't see their picture, but I believe my assistants chiefs, Joey Middleman and Chad Pasqua, are on as well. So if we have some specific questions for their areas, I might address them and have them speak up. Okay, so to start off, the overview of budget, and I'm sure you already know this, but 85% of the budget, as you know, is personnel salary. And so there's only 15% that I have to play with, so to speak. And so right there kind of limits the amount of what I can do and what I have options with. Another thing I want to bring up, again, I'm just kind of talking general. We have a couple different lines called travel and training, and that's almost a misleading title for that. It is our intention next year not to do any travel. And the training, really a better word for that would be recertification. The thing that is predominant for us in the fire service and medical field is the amount of certifications that is required to us from the state. And that is pretty much almost entirely what those lines are made of. And let's see. Let's go ahead. If there's no questions about generalities, I think if I go into the questions, I'll pretty much probably hit on all the big topics that you guys want to. Does that sound okay? Sounds great. Thank you, John. Okay. So the first question is, what do we think will be unspent at the end of the year? So some interesting things happen with the pandemic. First of all, again, regarding that travel and training line, which involves, for us, mostly recertifications, is that many of the certifications, since people could not meet and offices were closed, got extended. So we've saved quite a bit this year in travel and training. But the interesting thing is we'll have to pay the collector, so to speak, next year. So all the people who got their certifications extended will have to pay next year, and all the people who normally have their certifications come due will have to pay next year. But again, so this year there's a savings. We also saved some in medical supplies. Our call volume has gone down a little bit, which means we don't have to order as much medical supplies. And we saw fuel got quite a bit more, less expensive this year. Vehicle maintenance, equipment maintenance, a little bit of professional services. I'll give you that complete breakdown. I'll give that to the mayor after this, but essentially we think we'll have probably around $18,000 left over in those items. Any questions about that? Sounds good. Okay. All right. Number 2 is an easy one. We do not have any employees currently out with the CARES Act. Number 3, so I already talked about that with the training budget. Our travel and training is almost all required certifications. So what we did with travel and trainings, and this kind of bleeds into question number 4, is what we would cut, is if you look on your sheet, you'll see travel and training listed twice. Actually, I'm sorry, you'll see it listed 3 times. You'll see it under operations administration, operations suppression, and operations paramedic. And what we did is we looked through all those and essentially just made sure that all we were including was the amount for recertifications. So we're not at this point even looking at the fact of sending people to outside conferences, outside training, minimizing all that, and just making sure we keep the certifications we need. So if you look at travel and training under suppression, you'll see that line's currently 23,000. We think we can bring that down to 18,000, which we were already planning to do for this year anyways. So we think we can cut that one down. And then if you look at travel and training under paramedic, that one you'll see we're going to drop. I'm sorry, I think I'm getting these backwards. Suppression, we dropped from 23 to 20, save 3,000. The medic, we dropped from 23 to 18. So between the two of those, we cut $8,000 off. The next, sorry, any questions about that with travel and training? That all seem okay? Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. The next line that we could eliminate is professional services. That line, which is 10,802, 43,000. You'll see in there that this year we increased that up to $11,000. And the reason we increased that, and you might recall from the previous meeting that we had, is we were going to start some cancer testing. This is testing where we take blood work from our individuals every time they get their medical. And it tests for the most predominant types of cancer for first responders to hopefully give us an early warning system. It is rather expensive. If we were to eliminate that testing, we could save $5,500 on that line.
Don't do that. Oh, whoops, sorry.
Oh, don't eliminate that testing.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you feel that way. I think it is an important program that we'd like to see. So I wanted to bring that up because it is something we could eliminate. But I appreciate the support on that. The next thing I think we should discuss is part-time wages. So if we go back up to personnel, we'll see the second down line is part-time wages. We were hoping to get up to 50,000 in that area. I think we can pretty comfortable lowering that back down to 45. But let me tell you a little bit about the part-time position. So we have hired 3 different part-timers that work for us. The main purpose of this is to avoid having to hire another full-time position. And so we realized, my fire marshal, Joey Middleman, also acts as the emergency manager for the city. So he kind of has a dual role. There's only a few fire departments in the valley that do that. And while I think it does work pretty well for us, other cities took that position and moved it into a separate city function, not under the fire department. So I guess just my point is I take a lot of time from Joey away in order to do emergency management. So we need some more help doing his fire marshal functions. So for example, right now, one of the things that the fire marshal has to do is test all the fire risers for sprinkler systems and make sure those are tagged and inspected. And right now we're 60% out of compliance. So part of the position of those part-time is to go out and make sure and do all those. They also takes care of maintaining the Knox boxes. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with those. On the outside of buildings, there's a little, it's usually by the front door. And if you can kind of get my dimensions here, it's a little safe about that big. And there's only one type of key that opens it. And the fire department has that key. Every one of my engines has it. And instead of having to break into a building, they can use that key, open that safe, and all the keys to the building are in there. And it stops us from having to break down people's doors. So it's a great program. Because oftentimes we go on calls that are just a fire alarm, right? And so the person's a little dismayed if we did more damage breaking in than was going on inside. So anyways, we need part-time personnel to go inspect those Knox boxes, make sure they have the appropriate keys and they're functioning. And the third thing that our part-timers do is they take care of community outreach, such as our CERT programs. And what we found is the part-time, we were paying our personnel overtime hours to teach our CERT classes. We can hire these part-time personnel. I would say an average overtime hourly for a firefighter could be $45 to $50 an hour. We're paying our part-timers just over 20. So it's a much less expensive way to teach these classes. So even though you see the part-time budget has gone up a little bit, I think the way we really need to try to view it is it's saving us from having to hire a full-time personnel. And it's a very cost-effective way to do it.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Program. Would that give them an opportunity to become firefighters or work full-time, either with ourselves or in other cities?
That's a really good question. That's a very good question because it kind of leads into part of the fundamentals of the program. And I don't want to dig too deep into this, but part of this gets into mental health. But part of the problem often with firefighters and leaving their careers is firefighters become so embedded in their self-worth of being a firefighter that when they retire, one day they're full-time on their firefighter, next day they're completely off and they're lost. And unfortunately, a lot of suicides even happen after retirement. It's a really sad fact. What this program does is we actually have brought in retired firefighters from other organizations. So it's a really neat. I often heard these referred to as ladder programs. So what you have is someone who still has a lot to give back to the fire service, has a tremendous base of knowledge. Our retirees, I think, have already put 30 years in the fire service. And the neat thing is we're placing them where their area of interest is. So one of our part-timers has a great deal of inspection experience. That's what he loves. That's what we have him doing. And one of our others loves the community service, the outreach, the CERT programs, and we have him in charge of that. So instead of looking at it, Rosalba, for an opportunity to teach so many firefighters, what we're really doing is making use of that knowledge base and helping out some of the people who have retired from the field. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I really appreciate that explanation.
Yeah, I hope I didn't talk too long on that. We're actually really proud of that. It's a great program. And it's really neat seeing some of these, I don't want to use a word that's offensive, of a higher age bracket that are really excited about what they're doing. And yeah, it's really neat. They come in and just work a few hours a week, but they're very excited about it and they really do a good job for us. Okay, so any questions about anything I've mentioned so far?
Okay, so part-time wages, you can reduce or you want to maintain the 50,000?
Nope, I want to reduce that to 45. And again, I believe at the end of all these, the mayor is going to give you a sheet that has all this listed out. The two travel and trainings combined, we're going to lower that 8,000. Professional services, we can talk some more of that, but we talked about the possibility of eliminating 5,500 for cancer testing. And then we're on to the next favorite subject of everybody, overtime. Are we ready to dive into this one? Yeah.
We are, and we also understand that, firefighters, that's kind of a special case, I guess. But anyway, let us know what you can do.
Okay, so let me tell you kind of my plan. I've spent quite a bit of time analyzing our overtime, why it's spent, what's happening. But let me tell you this. You look at our overtime budget, which what we asked for next year was going to be, what did we ask? 425. Okay. I think I can bring that down to 385,000. But let me tell you a couple things about that. First, 176,000 of the 385 is overtime that is used to pay what's called FLSA, which is the part of the Fair Labor Standards Act, which is just the amount that my firefighters get for working their ordinary shifts. So in other words, firefighters, instead of working a 40-hour week, they actually work a 56-hour week. And the federal government, through however they determine these formulas, decides that every 2 weeks, they get an extra 10 hours of pay. And that makes it appropriate. That extra 10 hours of pay comes out of my overtime line. And that over the whole year equals 176,000. So that is 176 that I really don't have a way to touch. That's kind of just part of their normal salary. When you take that out of the 385 that I'm asking for this year, you'll see that leaves my overtime at 209,000. So that's the number I kind of want you to focus on that I have to mess with. So does that explanation make sense so far of that?
I think so. Are there any questions from the council? You guys understand that?
Yes.
Yeah, it'd almost be beneficial to have that in a separate line labeled FLSA or something rather than overtime, because it gets very confusing. All right, so what's happened the last couple of years is my overtime budget to maintain my minimum staffing, usually around the third quarter of the budget year, I start running out. And what I do is I lower my minimum staffing by one person. I start running short. And I do that the rest of the budget year in order to try to stay on budget. And every year I seem not to be able to do it. I always get into the 400s. And so this year I asked for that 425 because every other year I end up going up that high anyways. This year, in order to save money, what my plan is to run that one person short the entire year. So does that have a certain pain, if you will, attached to it? It does. But let me tell you what that looks like. Normally at a fire station, I have 3 people on an engine and 2 on an ambulance, okay? And that 3 and 2 enables those 2 different units to run together or separately. So if I have a medical that is not that serious, the ambulance can take it by themselves, and that engine will stay in service at that station and is able to take the next call. If I'm running one person short, I can only put 2 people on the engine and 2 on the ambulance. And I can't have an engine just run with 2 people. That's not safe. So what happens when one person short is when that station gets a call, no matter what it is, that whole station's out of service. And when the next call comes in, the next closest fire station has to take it, and there'll be a couple minute delay in the response. And that's what I want to try to avoid. So by going one person down, one station will be short. That will happen almost all the time. That'll be a very common occurrence, being one person down. But if I do that, service suffers a little bit, but I think I can maintain that $385,000 overtime. I hope that makes sense.
Diane?
Yes. Yes, Brett.
My biggest concern is, and I know you, I really believe that, John, you'll not allow this, but when you say suffer or service could suffer a little bit, I don't think any of us want that. So we appreciate you cutting it, and you do what you have to do, but just know that we don't want service. So.
Oh, and yes, I get that. And like I said, but I put myself in your position. I realize the tough decisions you're making, and I'm sure every department head's coming to you. And oh, I'm sorry, was I talking over you?
No. Oh. I'm just listening. I'm just thinking in my mind, thinking like fire is one of those things you don't want service to suffer at all.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. I know that you feel that way too. So
yeah, and I want to bring up too with overtime. I will never let somebody take vacation if it causes overtime. So what we do is every April our crews pick vacation. I know how many people can be gone on vacation before filling overtime, and I don't let more people pick their vacation than that. But unfortunately, what happens through the year is through sick leave and injuries, I end up having people off work, and that causes overtime. And like right now, I have someone who's gone for 6 to 8 weeks on a shoulder injury. These things just keep coming up. So even though, yes, I could give you a lower overtime figure based on nobody getting hurt or sick all year, but that hasn't happened yet. So I think that'd be pretty unreasonable. So Yeah.
Diane.
Yes. Rosalba?
So I do want to commend you. I know this overtime question has kind of come up with everybody for with the budget, but I do want to commend you because I know this is something that you brought up in the mid-year review and that you said you were going to work on. And I think, if this strategy works for you best with COVID and with everything, I want to be able to support you, but maybe we do consider just keeping in that overhead for services, like Brett said. But I know you also wanted to be successful in this idea and thought, and that's what you brought in last time. So I just want to reiterate that and commend you for that, and thank you for bringing that in and with your new plan. And and I'm sure the strategy will work, and whatever works best for the fire department, we also will support. So thank you.
Thanks. And of course, we'll continue to monitor call volume as this year goes on and see what's appropriate as far as staffing and overtime. So I'm always continually looking at that. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, and this involves when I was really looking at overtime heavy, like you said, the middle of last year, is there is a point where it makes more sense to hire more personnel than to pay overtime. And when I start getting around that 400,000 mark, I'm getting close. I'm getting really close, but it's not quite there yet. I'm still at a point where it still makes financial sense to pay the overtime than to hire 3 more people, which would be 1 each shift. So I think we're still operating the most cost-effective way we can. Yeah. We do have, we will save a little bit on fund days. Fund days is, I'm sorry, Brent, do you have something?
No.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just hearing a little, I don't know, feedback or something.
How come I'm always the one that gets blamed for the feedback?
We will save probably 5,000 or 6,000 on fund days with overtime, and that will help out a little bit. But yeah, other than that, I think 385 is probably as low as I'd be comfortable going in that. If there's no more question on that, we'll go ahead and go into the capital improvement projects.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Let's see. What about the 4%? The decreased operations by 4%?
So the decreased operations with the overtime was taking the overtime from 425 down to 385.
Okay, so your overall budget?
So our overall operations budget with the overtime, travel and training, professional services, part-time to wages, knock it down 53 to 58,000, which is my 4%.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, we'll get a print out of that, which should be easier to look at it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, CIP?
Okay, capital improvement. Interestingly enough, I was not planning to spend that much on capital improvement this year anyways. So the main thing that we want to get done is to refurb an ambulance. So what that means is we take the ambulance box, the body, if you will, where the patient goes, we take that off, and instead of buying a new one, we refurbish it, which is replace some equipment, get a new coat of paint, and then we'll put it on a new chassis and send it out. And we save about $100,000 doing that. So instead of spending $300, it's only $200. We feel one of our ambulances really needs that, and it's worth doing that at this time. But the CIP, and I know you know this, the main concern I have with CIP, and I believe Brenda's reviewing how much of our capital improvement plan money that's still in there she can carry over. But my main concern is getting an engine. One of the fire engines that we're riding in has over 150,000 miles in it. It's a 2005, and we just spent $43,000 on maintenance on it this year. And so my goal, even though I'm fine going another year without it, I don't think that's an issue. But my plan was to have that new one in our fleet the year after that. So, like I said, Brenda's looking at how much capital improvement plan she'll carry over. If that's not possible, there are some other options, such as a lease, where we could get that. But I think that's my biggest concern. It's not the money not spent this year, but it's making sure that we have the funds in 2 years to get that engine.
Any questions from the council on that?
No.
Okay.
All right. One day we'll have an electric fire truck.
I know. We've seen, and you know what? They'll end up coming down in cost. They're just very, very expensive right now. But it'll happen.
I know. It's one of those dream things. So.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
Number 7, discuss any other concerns you may have.
Okay. So the other thing I'm going to bring up, and I just feel I need to talk about it a little bit. And I don't have all the answers, and I've already heard right before I came on and at the beginning for you guys talking about the STEP plan a little bit. I was quite instrumental in developing and the STEP plan that we did last time and trying to fix a bunch of the pay inequities that we had. And the problem is once you decide to halt or freeze and not do the steps for a couple of years, then what we find is now it's time to hire somebody back on. And the problem is the steps haven't changed. So I can't hire somebody on because we're offering too little compared to other cities. So what we decide to do is, hey, let's offer that starting firefighter or start medic about $5,000 more than the lowest of the step. So we bring him in, and now he's making more than the people who've been here 2 or 3 years because they've been frozen. So then we're like, well, what are we going to do? We have all these disgruntled employees now because the new guy's making more money than the people who have already been here. And then we try to find a way to fix it. And then we find we're in this bad situation that we just worked so hard to get out of. So I really have some concerns about that. I don't have all the answers, and I know you're in a very tough dilemma. But when the people that I experienced leaving my organization and the people who were comparing their salaries with other organizations and all the research we did, I guess I would just offer this. What people compared were 2 things: their salary and their vacation time. And our city provides a host of a lot of their fantastic benefits. But when it comes down to employee retention and what they're looking for, they are looking at that salary and then second, vacation time. So I think what I'm kind of coming to is I would look at some of the other things when we're talking about funding the healthcare increase and things like this, that maybe we don't do those, but we get the STEP plan. I think that would be a more valuable trade-off for the employee. So, like I said, but I know the dilemma you're in, and I know I don't have the answers, but I guess I just wanted to share that insight that I had into it.
Thank you.
I know. I know.
Yes. Any questions or comments for John at this point from the council?
I have a comment that I am really appreciative that, John, that you would step forward and say that, and most have, but it's important for us to know because sometimes, and we've all experienced this, where no one says anything in a meeting like this, and then we hear from everyone after, and that's a mistake. I love that you're bold enough and willing enough to share that with us, because that is a huge issue that I'm hearing from lots and lots of people. And so I appreciate your honesty on that and your frankness. Thank you.
Thanks. Hey, looking over my budget sheet, I did find there was a couple other small items I wanted to explain that you might notice. Let me just do those real quick here. If you look under operation suppression and go about 2/3 down, and you'll see physicals. And you'll notice on that line, it's gone up from 13,500 to 17,500. So quite a little bit of an increase. The reason for that is the standards have changed. We used to only have to give physicals to firefighters if they were over 40 if they're under 40 every other year, and if they're over 40 once a year. Now they require everybody have annual. So to meet that requirement, we had to increase that line. If you go down 2 more, you'll see contract services with VEC from 161 to 181. We pretty much don't have a choice with that. VEC kind of does an assessment for each organization based on their call volume, what you got to pay. Again, no choice. The next one down, you'll see utility station 81. You'll see we have increased the utilities, and we also increased our buildings and ground maintenance. That's a little bit of an unknown. We got a brand new station. Although we have done quite a few energy reducing things for the station to keep costs down, it is also quite a bit bigger than our previous station. So we're kind of trying to give a guess of what that'll look like next year. And so we picked 5,000 more. Hopefully it won't be, but we'll just have to wait and see on that one. And I believe those are all the extra little things I wanted to bring up to kind of explain to you that you might notice.
John, what is the professional services?
Are you looking under suppression, or are you looking under paramedic?
Under suppression.
Okay, the professional service under suppression, that was going to be for the cancer testing.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought you
So
probably.
we have mental health and cancer testing under that line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Hey, John, don't cut anything in your budget that has to do with health and safety or service for the people of Murray. Your men and women are very important to us and Murray as well. So don't put them in the back seat on anything.
I appreciate that, Dale. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Were you during the recession the last time around?
Yes.
Okay. What was your experience with overtime and just step increase in wages at that time? Just to kind of get an idea and how it could play for us now.
Yeah. Well, I think that example I gave you of, you froze the step plan. So pretty much what happened is after a year, you were 2.5% and 5% behind everyone else. And then the next thing you know, you were 5 to 10% behind. And the next thing you know, you were 10 to 15% behind everybody else. And that's where all of a sudden for the city, we had to provide this huge tax increase to get back to where we should be. The other problem was kind of that I alluded before, is we had tremendous compression problems because either the step plans were froze or our pay scale was froze, and our pay scale was too low to attract people to come work here. So we had to pay people, we had to offer them more to get them here, and then they're making more than current workers. And that's what caused so much problem within my ranks, is you'd have some guy who is a 3-year employee and the brand new guy's coming in making more than him. And that kind of followed them through their, for the next 5 or 6 years. That kind of was just there, just to really annoying people. The other thing that happened, and you're probably aware of this, I believe is a method to help try to get back on budget, was that they offered early retirement incentive. I believe it was kind of a complicated formula, but essentially in a nutshell, they offered 6 months salary up front if people would retire early, and they did not fill those positions. And that helped save some money. Does that help at all, I hope?
Yeah, it does. I think I just really want to understand what some of the failures were, what worked, what didn't work, and maybe look at it a little bit differently and understand it as well. So
yeah, and I could tell you, to get us back on track, in addition to having to have the high property tax increase and the meetings with all the citizens, is since all the employees' salaries were so varied, what we had to do, or what I had to do, was go back in time and for every employee figure out when they were hired, any promotions they might have, and figure out by the month of where they should be if a step plan existed and figure out their salary. And I had to go through and do that for every single employee. So I had to do it for 60 employees, figure out and try to get them in a place where people who've been here longer are now making more than others. And the interesting thing, just to tell you how far out of whack it got, I mean, we had people getting a 3% raise and other people getting a 20% raise, where you would think it'd be the same across the board. But once you start freezing the pay scale and then hiring other people and putting them in different places in the pay scale, everything just gets so crazy. And that's what caused our biggest morale issues. And now that that's been solved with the step plan, I can't even tell you how nice it is. It just takes wages off the table and people are just so much more comfortable with it. So even, I think people can easily understand no cost of living. You know, the step plans will stay consistent, but just keep people moving through the step plan so that in the next year or the next 2 years, when you hire more people, I can put them in the appropriate spot, a couple steps below other people. That really helps us out.
Thank you, John. I mean, I just, since we don't know, you know, what's going to happen with this, it's very hard. And I know we have to make the hard decisions. So, and we don't want to lay anybody off. And so anyway, we're going to do our best.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. I know you got tough decisions. I appreciate all of you. I don't envy all of you. I don't envy you, but I appreciate you.
Thanks, John. Any other questions, comments for John? If not, we'll go on break.
All right. Well, hey, thank you very much for your time and appreciate all your questions and all your support. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. You do a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. When do you want us back, Diane?
Well, I guess at 2:45, so you have about 10 minutes. So,
2:45 is about 7 minutes. So you want us back in 7 minutes?
7 minutes.
Okay, we'll do it.
Okay, thanks.
If you see me a tad longer, you'll know what I'm doing.
So now we have Police Department, and that's Chief Craig Burnett. Craig?
Hello. I've got Joe Tarver here and Kristen Reardon. They're here in the office, social distancing away from me. But they're in here listening to what's going on, so they're here too.
Well, welcome all.
They just didn't log in. Well, how would you like us to start? I can start by talking about our budget, if that's where you want me to start.
I think that would be great. What's the page number? And
Page number is 41. Begins with our budget. Real briefly, there's really no increase on any of the line items except for one in our budget. We have the years done the best we can trying to hold everything flat and finding that we're able to utilize our funds for what we need. The one that we did increase is on page 42. It's under operations administration. It's professional services. It's 4,300 or 42,000. But that one's, we increased up to $15,000 from, looks like it was 14 this last year. That's for our, what we pay Lexipol. Lexipol is a company that we have contracted with to do our policy and procedure manual. So they write policies and procedures, and with the exception of maybe one agency in the Salt Lake Valley, that's where we go for just to keep up to date with the new laws and Supreme Court decisions, and we're able to work Murray City and how we operate into that. But it's made our ability to put our procedures together without having somebody trying to do it full time here and working with our attorney's office. So that's what that increase is, and it was about $1,000. But other than that, everything else should be the same. We didn't ask for any other increases in our operating budget this year.
Okay, Chief, the risk assessment.
Well, risk assessment, fleet assessment, I have no control over. Those do go up, and you'd have to talk to Brenda or someone with information on that, because the only that and the VEC obviously went up because it's like John told you in the last meeting, they put their assessments out there. But as far as risk assessment and fleet assessment, I don't know. I have no answers for that or as to where it is.
I talked about them yesterday. They went up because last year they were artificially deflated as we adjusted the fund balance in those. So now you're seeing right there, you picked it up, that they have gone up, back up due to that. And I think his risk assessment went up due to that recalculation of where all the liabilities and where the insurance policies are too. So between those two things, he got a big hit in the risk assessment.
And probably the one other thing that I didn't touch on that did go up and will be going up is our animal control budget. And we'll talk about that in the committee of the whole, but our contract is up and we are needing to plan a new interlocal, and one way or another, our assessment, what it'll cost us for animal control will be going up a little bit this year.
Okay.
And that's the money we'll be paying for animal control, for the animal services to who we enter into the agreement with.
Some of that increase in his animal control, the 31% increase, is offset by an increase in the amount of money they're going to pay us rent on the building where animal control services is. And so we got revenue to offset some of that increased expense. It's not going to offset all of it, but it'll offset part of it.
Yeah, without getting deep in the weeds about the animal services interlocal, like I say, we'll be talking about that later. There's, we'll be able to explain where we're at and what's going into there as far as what we'll be paying and really the differences.
Okay. Are there any questions for the chief from council?
So other than that, those line items that we have control over, we didn't do any increases with, other than the one we talked about.
Okay. Looks good. Now are the questions.
All right. First of all, you want to talk about what amount we feel we might have unspent at the end of this year. If we start on, I've got two different papers here, so I'm going to make sure that I get the right numbers for you. On page 41 is our part-time wages. Shows we will have 11,880. Unspent. That's for part-time wages. We have in the past had a part-time employee that worked in records. Our last employee, she got married early into this budget year, and we haven't had the need to replace her. So that money still has been there, and we haven't had the need for that position the rest of this budget year. The other, we go down to our travel and learning, which is on page 42. That's our training budget. See if I can find it here. There it is. These two columns are offset. This year, we're looking at that we should have about $10,000 unspent. Since March, we have canceled a lot of training, a lot of travel that had been already scheduled out and paid for, and some of that money has come back. But there's been a lot of our training has canceled out, so that has some overage in it. The next line is our supplies and administration. We're looking at about $6,500.
Chief, really quick, are you, as your certifications or anything that you need to update for any of the officers or yourself in that line item as well?
Not for this year. But when we talk about some cuts for the next year budget, we can talk about that. But no, the officers are required to have 40 hours of in-service training by the state to keep their licenses and their certifications. So that's where that money comes from, is paying for the classes, paying for instructors. Occasionally there are classes or there's conferences or things that people have traveled to and needed to for out-of-state travel. So that's where some of that for this year. This year's, I think as of right now, everyone has the 40 hours, which is the minimum required. So I think for this year, we're okay.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on this one would be our small equipment. We're looking like we will have $2,500 unspent there. And then the miscellaneous account on this in administration, we should have $2,500 unspent also. Our next, then if we go down to still under operations and administration, criminal record services, we're looking at probably $3,000 that will be unspent, and that's money that we use for different investigative issues. And sometimes it's hard to say what we'll have and what we won't have, depending on the cases and the things that go on during the year. So sometimes some of these accounts will be spent right to everything that's in there, or maybe a little over, and other times, and if we're lucky, we're not in that position. If we go to still on page 42 under patrol, with supplies, we think we will have about $1,800 that we will have left over. The next line, small equipment, we're estimating about $4,000. And that's just depends on equipment breaking and what we have to buy, radios and other things that are kind of pricey. So this year so far, we've done all right. Taser replacement, we have $39 left in that account. That's otherwise has been spent out. And then in which one am I looking at? Radar gun replacement, excuse me, we'll have $2,500 there that won't be spent. And then make sure I'm still in the same equipment maintenance. Pardon? Oh, $5,500. And again, that's, we've been lucky not had some of our radios or other things break down. So there's still about half of the money that was budgeted in that account that we still haven't had to utilize. Things could change tomorrow with some of these accounts. That's the scary part. Then we go into investigations. Supplies, we should have $500 unspent. Small equipment, 6,000. Have not had the need to replace any of the equipment or the desks or anything else in that office. So we're hoping another year or so we won't have to worry a lot about that kind of money with the new building. Miscellaneous should be 4,000 left in that budget. Our buy money. Now, buy money is money that we use for investigations, for our special investigations, our narcotics, and other things. We use that to purchase whatever's needed during the investigation, whether it's paying informants or having to buy drugs or anything else that goes along those lines. So we should have 5,000. Well, I don't think any of it's been spent this year. So the bare minimum 5,000 and possibly more. It just depends on the investigations that they have going on. And then community services. Make sure I'm on. Supplies, we should have $700. Crossing guard supplies, we're looking at $2,000 there. We're up to speed with all of the equipment and clothing and everything else that the equipment the crossing guards need. We've got a pretty good supply right now. Cadets, we would have $450 left over in their supplies. SWAT supplies, $2,000. Let's see. I think did I switch on you? No, we're still in community services. Also equipment maintenance, about $2,000. In the DARE program, we're looking at about $5,000 left over. The DARE program was suspended, so we have a whole half of the school year that we didn't have to purchase any of the equipment or the books or what. Well, I think the books were purchased, but all the other stuff that would be used, the T-shirts and things, we fund the entire DARE program. So that's all coming out of our budget. Crime prevention, we should still have about $4,000 left over. That's money that's not going to be spent for things that would be used on, that they would be purchasing now to be used for fun days and the parade and anything else that's going to happen that would have happened during the summer. So there's left over there. Those are the ones that we looked at that we could see that we had definite amounts that we weren't going to use and that we could count on being over. I think that there are other accounts that as the budget year comes to an end, there will be some leftover money. It's just right now we still have 2 months to go with operations, and so it's kind of hard to say exactly what we will or won't spend because we do still have a couple of months left and or a month and a half that we have to account for this year. Any questions?
Any questions for the chief?
No.
Hey.
Okay. As far as CARES Act, I think Robin probably would talk about that, but I think at one point we had our victim advocates that were using portions of that by working from home and using some of their the money to cover us for some of their daycare when they weren't working. So the most we had, we have had 2, and I'm not sure where we're at right now with that. As far as training and travel, like I say, it's called learning and travel and learning. Like I said, all of our sworn personnel have to have a minimum of 40 hours, and that's just the minimum. And that includes firearms, vehicle driving, legal update training, any kind of bias training or crisis intervention training that we have to do. And all those, we usually have to either send somebody to a class that costs money, or we pay for an instructor to come in to instruct our employees. So that gets a little pricey, and there are things that we really can't go without if we don't have our 40 hours and meet certain qualifications with our training, and then we lose our certifications. SWAT team, our crime scene investigators, victim advocates, everybody has some specialties that they need to focus on. So and everything's evaluated every year, especially if it's classes or conferences that they have had to go out of state or out of town for. And usually, unless there's no other options, we don't do a lot of travel, or we don't have a big budget, and we try not to do travel. And sometimes they actually pick up the travel depending on whether they're going on a grant or some other type of training. So our training budget is, as I'm sure you could tell, our training budget is very critical to what we do. Keeps us, first of all, it keeps us and the citizens safe by making sure our employees are trained, certified, doing the jobs they need to do. It also helps with keeping us out of litigation and other areas if we're making sure that we're up on the most current laws and policies and ways of dealing with people. Things have changed a lot lately. We're having to focus more on dealing with people who are in crisis. It's not something that we were doing even 10 years ago, and the vast majority, especially during, it's been increasing anyway, but the last 3 or 4 months, we do spend a lot of time dealing with people in crisis. People will ask all the time how our call volume is, and it has dropped a little bit because there are certain things that people just aren't calling us for. But the calls that we are going on, and this is what the officer is saying, it's just weird. Things are different out there, and people are struggling, and we end up sometimes being the first ones that have to deal with them and try to get them the resources. So that all is important to the training. So we're trying to keep them trained in everything that will keep themselves safe and try to help the community as well.
So it sounds like your calls are up.
Well, overall, they're not up. I think they've been a little bit down, but the type of calls, we're not going on a lot of just the simple neighbor or complaints or minor things. It's just the calls we're going on. A lot of, I hate to say it because I've heard other agencies say that their domestics were up. On ours, it kind of depends on the moment whether they're up and down. But we do a lot of welfare checks, a lot of mental calls, which we end up involving the fire department with as well, because people need to be evaluated. We've had a couple of some shootings and stabbings. It's just one of those things that it's just weird. I think that's probably the best way to put it. So we're so far so good, but it's just strange times for everybody, and that includes the type of things we have to deal with.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. Number 4.
Okay. We sat down and went over our budget. I'm sure you hear about it from everyone, but obviously any kind of cuts, we feel that we've streamlined our budget to where we haven't asked for increases for several years. Some of these budget lines we've been running for 10 years since the last issues, and we've been doing okay. So, we looked at what we thought we could cut, and hope that that doesn't hurt us too bad. But if we start out, the part-time seasonal, or the seasonal part-time employee that we had for $13,000, we don't see us utilizing that position. So it's been vacant for the better part of this year, and we have no intentions in the upcoming year to, after we talk about that, I've talked about that, to fill that position. We would make other arrangements if we got to the position or the spot where we needed some help there, but right now we'll go without. We could go without. The next item we were looking at is our cadets. The cadet budget is $45,000. At the end of June, when the seniors graduate, they move on from our cadet program. We then, in the past, we would spend the last month or so of the school year recruiting and hiring new cadets. We would look at not hiring any new cadets this year and utilizing the cadets that we currently have. And by doing so that, we figure we could save $20,000. The next item, in fact, it goes, I know it's also the next item on the list, but is our overtime. And our current overtime budget is $173,000. And I'm looking at what we spent last year, and I believe we were a little under that. We felt that we could cut $13,000 out of our overtime budget. And overtime is not something that's, it's kind of hard to talk about what we could and couldn't cut in overtime. There's not any automatic overtime. Our overtime is used to backfill patrol positions, and we have minimum staffings for patrol that is to be able to maintain responding to the calls for service when the citizens call, so that the community's safe, but also to make sure that our officers are safe. Because if we go down too low, we don't have enough officers to back each other up, and these days most calls require at least 2 officers to respond. So we utilize overtime to backfill these positions. If somebody's called in sick, if they're on vacation, if they're in training, we utilize it, as we did last night when we had a shooting, to call out our detectives or our crime scene investigators, because they don't work 24 hours a day, and we need to take care of them when they come out to do the jobs they're doing, as well as if we ever have need for our SWAT team. So that's where most of our overtime goes. All overtime is pre-approved, so that it has to be approved by a supervisor. That being said, we're thinking that we could probably look at $13,000 out of our training. Overtime. Jumping ahead of myself. The next item we're looking at is our learning and travel, which sits at $30,000. Just looking at what we spent last year, what we've spent this year, realizing we were able to get what we needed to get this year, even with all the cancellations, that we could look at $7,000 decrease there if we needed to. It would restrict any travel or out-of-town training, and as far as what we would be able to bring in as far as instructors or the type of training that we'd be able to get our officers to. So it'd be tight, and it would cramp some of the ways in which we've been able to do it in the past, but it's something that we could definitely look at. The next, make sure I'm looking at the right one here. These supplies, the next line, and this is what we use, just the supplies we use on a daily basis. Our our printer paper and pens and pencils and notepads and thermal paper that we have in the cars. So the officers, all their citations, the accident investigations that they do, the forms that they have to fill out, they all do them on their computers in their car, and it uses the thermal paper to print out the citations or the accident reports. And so that's what that's used for. And, you know, every year the usage is just a little different. So, I mean,
Chief,
yes.
I'm kind of lost.
Okay, I'm on supplies on administration, 4210 on page 42.
Okay, so you're going through your budget then.
Well, I'm just giving you the ones you wanted to know where we thought we could cut. So,
Oh, okay.
4%. So I'm just going down the ones where we had looked at the possibility of giving up some money to get to a 4% cut.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I wasn't sure if that's what that was, but great. Thank you. Continue.
If I got you lost, but no, I'm just going down my budget and letting you know the specific lines that we're thinking we could cut a little bit.
Perfect. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Still in that same administration would be our miscellaneous budget, and we're looking at cutting 3,000 there. And this is money that we use for our awards banquet, medals and personalized employee recognition and things that we use just throughout the year to take care of our employees in that manner. So we thought about $3,000. And then still in that administration, the criminal records service, that's one we were giving some money back this year. So we thought we could probably do the same thing next year with the $3,000. If we go to patrol, we would go to radar gun replacement, which is $6,500. We could give up $5,000 there. That would be no new equipment purchases. That would just be repairs only to maintain the equipment that we currently have. So we wouldn't be able to replace anything. And then in equipment maintenance, in that same in patrol, we're looking at 3,000. Again, this fluctuates depending on upon the need. You never really know what equipment's going to break down, what we're going to have to replace, whether it's the printers or our computers or the fingerprint machine that we use here in the office or scanners. But we looked at possibly $3,000 there. Then in investigations, make sure we're still on page 42 under small equipment. Again, same as our other equipment budgets. This one is for investigations, and we would look at about $2,500 there. And again, that just restricts what we'd be able to purchase or as we go around throughout the year. On page 43, under community services, cadet supplies is $2,000. We looked at if we don't replace cadets and we maintain the cadets we currently have, we could give up $1,500. We wouldn't need to buy any new equipment or uniforms for people we wouldn't be hiring. And it would still leave a little bit of money for maintenance for the ones that are still there. Yep, there's one more there. Crossing guards, I did go down one too far. So our crossing guard supplies, that's at $4,000. And looking at what we have this year and not needing to spend all of it, we were looking at being able to probably forego about $3,500 of that this next year also, because they currently have a pretty good stockpile of equipment for the crossing guards. So now I'll try to get back online to what, so I'm at the SWAT supplies, which is also in community services. That's a $20,000 budget. We use that for training, to buy their equipment, their helmets, their vests, and the things that they use, and talking with them with what they purchased this year, what they absolutely have to have next year. Thought that we could possibly give up $8,000 there. It would just limit some of their training and outside the department training, but probably not as much of the equipment as it could impact. Also on the small equipment in community services, we're looking at $2,000, and that's money that we use for purchasing and maintaining the bicycles and the speed trailers and the equipment that we use there. On the DARE program, we're looking at $1,300. What that would do would allow us to continue purchasing the books and the educational items, but would restrict the purchase of some of the promotional items that we give out at the during the class or at the end of the year, and possibly even the T-shirts. But we would still be able to do the program.
Blank. Hello, Craig. This is my own opinion. I really would not like to see it, but just me, cut with the DARE. That's such a great program to be able to give those T-shirts and those promotional things that you talked about. Those are our upcoming future kids. That's my own opinion, but thank you.
And trust me, we have the same feelings. It's just looking at areas that wouldn't hurt as much in some of our other operations, and that was one of them that we thought we could take a little, but again, something that we would definitely think about, because our crime prevention supplies, which is out of that same community services, and that's where we buy educational and department promotional stuff, a lot of the same type of equipment, but we were looking at cutting that in half to $6,481, which means we wouldn't buy a lot of the things that we pass out in parades and health and safety fairs and things that we probably may not have this year. And that's what we looked at with our 4%.
Okay, so what's the bottom line for that? How much?
Roughly $97,281. It was 4.3%.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're kind of running late. So do you have any CIP projects?
Our CIP projects is our cars. And we've already did that with the CIP committee. I think we were talking about down to 4 cars this year, understanding where the money needs to go. And, our biggest concern, will go into number 7 as well, is the fewer cars we buy, the more money it costs for vehicle maintenance. Because we have cars now that are 6 and 7 years old that we're still trying to replace. So for the most part, we're doing okay, and anything's better than nothing, and we would do the best we can even if we didn't get cars. So, but that's our CIP project, is just the cars this year. And then, as far as any concerns we have, is probably the same that you've probably heard from other department directors. We're concerned about our employees first and foremost, and we fought long and hard to get to where we're at. We're at full staff. We have been for the most part for the last 2 years. People haven't left our department to go to another department in 3 years. That's a good thing. The ones that have left us have left because they need to leave, and we've encouraged them to leave. But we don't have them quitting and leaving us and going to other agencies, and that revolves around, first of all, they love working for Murray, and for one of those years we had people that were sticking around waiting to see what would happen with the step plan and before they decided whether they would leave or not, because they didn't want to leave. And with what you've done in the past, that has kept us with our staffing. And if we can maintain our staffing, keep our employees here and happy, we're not having to fight with other agencies in other cities for the same people, that helps us and helps keep our overtime down. If we've got all our people in place, our overtime can usually last a long ways.
Great. Questions for the chief?
Just a big thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, really appreciate what you do, Chief, and thanks for the information and wish us luck.
Well, we're all wishing that.
Yeah, I know. We could all take some, right?
Exactly.
If I mind, I appreciate what you've done on looking at budget cuts, but don't cut anything that puts officers at risk. SWAT equipment, training, anything that keeps your men and women safe, keep that in your.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for the chief? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you take care and be safe.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we're running late, so thanks for your patience, Jennifer.
No problem. Maybe I'll gain some time.
Appreciate that. Okay, we're at the mayor's office and.
Correct. So the mayor's office budget is page 20 in your budget books. And reviewing our budget, we stayed flat from last year. There are a couple line items that I'll talk about. The mayor's special projects, that is where we pay for the legislative breakfast, the board of commissions dinner, employee ice cream day, the mayor's scholarships that we give out. We select 2 graduating seniors from both Cottonwood High School and Murray High School and award them with scholarships. So that's what that line item pays for. Professional services is where we pay our lobbyists. So we have 2 lobbyists each year that we send to represent our interests during the legislative session. That's where that comes out of. So our budget is not very complicated. It's 1 page. It doesn't fluctuate very much. So if you'd like, I can go ahead and respond to the questions that you sent out.
Okay.
All right. So question 1, what amounts will be unspent at the end of this fiscal year? We came up with a total of $36,218 that will be unspent. The breakdown, 12,718 of that will come from our seasonal part-time employee line item. You'll recall that we used to have a part-time employee in the mayor's office that helped with the website administration and social media. That position has been vacated, and we've just been holding on to that. As we implement new communication methods, there may still be a need to fill that position, but for now we're trying to keep it vacant, and we'll keep the cost down on that line item. $3,500 will come from travel and learning. Like everyone else, many conferences were canceled, and we just don't foresee that we'll be spending that money in this budget year. $20,000 is going to come from professional services. We've already paid the lobbyists this year, but we did not have an intern. Usually we do have an intern. We did have one lined up, but the scheduling didn't work out. So we ended up not spending all of those funds. As far as question 2, the CARES Act, we don't have anyone using CARES leave. Question 3, how much travel and training budget is critical to maintain certifications? We do not have certifications or licenses that pertain to our jobs here in the mayor's office. Question 4, what would you cut if asked to decrease operations by 4%? So 4% of our operations is $3,700. So we would recommend taking that out of the part-time wages line item, and we'll just wait to fill that spot. There are also some non-departmental cuts that I will let the mayor discuss as soon as I get through these next 2 questions, which are very brief. Overtime, we don't have overtime in our office. And CIP projects, we also do not have any CIP project line items in the mayor's office. So that covers the mayor's office budget. Mayor, I'll turn it to you to talk about that non-departmental line.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. We are on page 64 in your books for the non-departmental. The 4% cut for this account would be equal to $18,300. And this is what we are proposing to do to reach that number. Line 42-140 supplies decreased by $3,100 to make it $16,900. Then 43-100 League of Cities and Towns, we can delete or decrease that amount by $7,000 and still make the commitment that we have for our membership and dues there. So make that line 43,000. The next ones, we firmly believe that as we are cutting our budgets, that those entities that we donate cash to should also have some reductions. And that's not unprecedented. Line 43-200, the Boys and Girls Club. Since I've been involved with budgets from the time I started on the council, that line has fluctuated between $75,000 and $150,000, depending on what was available. We are recommending to decrease that by $5,000 and make that $95,000. The Youth Chamber, 43-204, we're recommending to cut that by $1,000 and change that to $1,500. And then the 43-205, the Chamber of Commerce, to reduce that by $2,200 and make that item $18,000. And that gives us the $18,300, or the 4% that the council has requested. Any questions about that?
I have a question about the Miss Murray line is up from previous years. And so I'm wondering where that goes, especially if there's not the parade or those type of things that I know sometimes those costs go towards.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. The reason that was increased this year is that about 6 months ago or so, the representative from the Miss Murray pageant came in and said that they were not going to be able to have the school building donated to them in the future, and they had an additional $700 cost. So that's why we increased that. The reason that we haven't cut that is that it's unknown at this point if they'll have the event this year, and if they don't, then that money will be able to just go back into the reserves because it'll just stay in the budget. But if they do have it, believe it or not, that $6,200 is the bulk of their budget for the event. And that's why that's why I left it as it is, because without that, they probably wouldn't have the event at all, where the others would be a slight reduction in their operating budgets. So that's the reasoning for that. Any other questions?
I have a question about the city newsletter. What is that specifically?
That is what we pay to the Murray Journal for our newsletter that's in there, printed in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any others?
Other questions for the mayor?
I would hop back to just the regular mayor's budget page, and I just wanted to ask about the things like boards and commissions dinner that may not be possible. It's still a ways out, obviously, but just wondering if there's thoughts on alternates to that type of recognition this year. Just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
We have talked about that briefly. We usually do the employee ice cream appreciation day in July, and we really don't know what that's going to look like this year. Some of those expenses are paid out of the current year's budget just because of the timing. So there may be some savings there. As far as the other events, it's just too early to say because they usually happen more in the first part of the year, January, February. So we've got a little time before we know.
And if I could add to that, Jennifer, yes, I think, Kat, I think we do want to do something. It may not be the traditional dinner that we're used to, but we would like to do something for appreciation for our boards and commission members who, as you know from firsthand, put in a lot of time, and most of them are unpaid.
Are there any other questions at this point? Okay, I have a question on the personnel. Let's see. Oh, on the operations. There's, let's see, for car allowance, there's 16,500. It seems like a lot. I'm just wondering what that is.
Do you have the breakdown for that, Brenda? It covers.
That's your car allowances that are paid to, the mayor gets a car allowance, Doug gets a car allowance, I believe Jennifer gets a car allowance. So the three of those get the car allowance, and you add those up, that's what it comes to.
Okay, but aren't usually department heads allowed 3,500?
No, it's 42.
Oh, 42. I thought it was 35. Okay, so then that would be 12,000. So is there more than three?
I don't know. I've never actually looked at that one. It looks like they spend it all. They might have, Kathy might get per dollar or per mileage as she drives. I'm not sure. I would have to look into that. I'll look into it for you.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Any other questions? Okay.
Diane, did you want that to go on contingency, that last item?
I'll just tell you what it is when I figure it out. I'll send you an email.
All right.
We'll adjust it if we're not going to spend it.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Now we are at City Council office. Jan Lopez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, the city council budget is on page 18. And we as well have kind of a small budget. So I was just going to go through the questions that you had asked about. And the first item was current year savings. I came up with a total of $17,400 in savings. And that comes from travel and training, $9,700, meals, $4,000, supplies, $200, and miscellaneous, $3,500. Any questions on those?
We might not have time to do this now, but with those items, I'd like to have some of those things put on the contingency items. I want to talk about council travel. I'd like to talk about council benefits. And I'd like
Brad?
Yes.
I'm going to talk about travel on this year's budget if you want to wait just a minute.
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay. Those are the unspent dollars from this current year's budget. Okay. So then going to 2021 and the travel decreases, we actually had already decreased when Brenda and the mayor were going through and decreasing everybody's budgets. We took out any travel for APPA. And since then, I would decrease that line item, let's see, another $21,800. And what we would leave in are the local ULCT events. Then I would also, for the 4% reductions, we decrease our meals to $3,300. Excuse me, to $4,600. That's a $3,300 decrease. Our supplies to $1,400, and our miscellaneous to $3,210. And we had already decreased that from last year based on the fact that we don't have elections this year. And our elections and meals and miscellaneous covers a lot of those expenses. So any questions on that? Brett, does that cover what you're interested in, or are you still?
Yeah, I'd still like to have it on there, council travel. I've just had some questions, but you probably answered the main one about DC, that you've taken that out.
Oh yeah, that's all out for everybody.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I want to make sure, but I still have that. A couple of questions I might have, and I can't talk about it unless we have it on the contingency. Is that correct?
No, you can ask questions.
No, I mean at the meeting on Friday.
Oh, I think we need to have a pretty specific agenda usually.
Okay. Yeah, put that on there just in case I have some other questions on council travel then.
Okay. Let's see. And then one of our larger line items is the professional services. And I just wanted to point out that that is the annual financial audit, as well as our video streaming. And there's absolutely nothing else in that line item. And we do have a CIP project, one project, and this is $30,000 for clean energy vehicles. I think the idea was to continue building that fund so that the departments can pull from it whenever they're able to upgrade one of their vehicle purchases to a clean energy.
I have a comment that was not included in this year's budget because we're not buying any new vehicles except for 4 police cars. We will
I thought you had it in there, Brenda.
No, it's not there. We will roll forward what we have left from last year.
Okay.
So we will have $28,000 that could be used for any vehicles that they are buying. They are not, I think they're only buying the 4 police cars and maybe a dump truck or some of those great big bucket trucks and stuff. I don't know if there's an option there, but right now, that's the way it came out of the CIP committee.
Okay. That's everything I have unless you have questions.
Yeah, I still would like to have council benefits put on there to talk about
benefits.
Yeah, just any benefits, talk car allowance and all that, similar to what we've asked the mayor to do. I would like us to do, and the council food. As far as did we at one time we talked about cutting the dinners in half? Are we still doing that, or we cut that totally out?
Well, I left some budget in for that. And, but just kind of figured that we wouldn't have meals for several months now. I don't know, when we're going to get back to regular meetings and when we feel comfortable all coming together for a meal. But I did leave some money in it for going forward.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that also then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Jan. Let's see.
Hey, Jan, sorry guys. I have a quick question for like the part-time wages, the admin allocated wages. Are you using all of those funds for all of our stuff that we have in-house?
Connie's part-time and Patty is our admin.
Okay. All right.
Oh, are you talking about the admin allocation?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a reduction that we do as money is put together from other departments to reduce our budget.
Okay, thank you.
The admin allocation is the amount that you guys spend supervising water, wastewater, all of those other funds. And part of your cost of your department over there, it's 40%. So that's a math problem. Whatever above it is 40% of that is the admin allocation.
And I have a question about what you just said. What do you mean by supervising those? What do you mean?
Really supervise. It's the amount of time they spend working on their contracts, approving the budget, working on it's not supervised per se, but it's the amount of their overhead, of their department, the time they spend doing things for the other funds. It was based on a study at one point. I don't know exactly what criteria they used for council. I know for IT, they use the number of computers compared to everybody else's computers. So 40% is for approving what power is doing. And we're looking at what wastewater, you just did a wastewater contract or agreement with this county, that kind of stuff. So that's what those are for.
Thank you.
Okay, Jan.
Yes.
All right. So you did the CIP, you've done everything except for discuss any other concerns that you may have.
I don't really have any other concerns. I think we'll be fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. We really appreciate your help, and I appreciate your support in all this. You've been wonderful. So
thank you.
Any other questions, comments for Jan? All right. Now we are at Human Resources. Robin Colton.
Hi, good afternoon.
Welcome.
Hi.
Okay, what page number?
So my budget is on pages 31 and 32. And then are we just going to go through the budget first and then answer the questions?
That'd be great.
So the human resources budget is a pretty straightforward budget and stays pretty status quo from year to year. This year, 2 line items needed to increase. The first was software maintenance, and that was just the price of our employee performance evaluation system went up. That increased $800. And then exams and testing increased last year 500. So my budget went up 1,300, but then to keep it neutral, I decreased my overtime from 1,000 to 500, and I decreased the travel by 1,000. That's pretty much the only changes that happened from last year to this year.
We also moved the wellness program from non-departmental to the HR budget because it does benefit all employees, and so it should be allocated out with her expenses in the admin allocations.
Can you tell me what the wellness program entails? I'm just not as familiar with it.
Yeah, so we have a wellness council. It has a representative from multiple departments within the city, and they get together and create challenges for the employees to increase employee wellness and engagement. So the different months will have different topics to just get employees involved in their wellness. Oh my gosh. Excuse me.
And if I can jump in there, it's been a major benefit to the city because of saving money for our premiums on our insurance. So, I mean, it seems like years ago, the premiums were going a lot higher than 6%. And so it's been a successful program as far as I can see.
Thank you. Questions?
Any other questions for Robin on that? Okay, let's see, travel and training. I guess you'll deal with that when you answer the questions, right? Because it seems like it's gone up a lot. Okay, great.
Okay, so do you want me to start with number one? Okay.
Thank you.
So our estimated total unspent for this year is 41,700, and that's mostly coming from professional services, the travel and training, and we had a part-timer who hasn't been working during the crisis. So there's pretty good savings there. And then number two, for the CARES Act, since I'm the collector of all the forms and applications for those, I'll go through. For the city, our management and the employees have been awesome in trying to find situations where we can have adequate coverage. So we have 5 employees out for caring for childcare. Only one of those employees is unable to telecommute or come in. So she's full-time off for childcare. 2 employees are coming into the office part-time and then intermittently using the emergency family leave so they're supplementing that. And the other 2 are able to telecommute part-time and then utilize the family leave for the rest of the time. And then we've had 7 employees apply for emergency paid sick leave. And none of those used the full 2 weeks. They were either a week or less, and that was to care for a family member who was sick or they were seeking their own diagnosis for COVID. And just a fun fact, as of last pay period, 514 hours had been used towards that. So,
thank you, Robin. Any questions about that from the council? Okay. Next question.
Okay, so for the travel and training, we could reduce that budget by 2/3. So I'm asking for 4,000 to be left in the budget. My certification requires professional development credits, and the majority of these come from attending a major conference. Just getting online training like 1 hour here and there doesn't really get me my 60 hours of credits. And it just puts off my other staff earning hours towards getting their certifications. They don't have a certification minimum requirement right now. So this would just be for mine.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Sorry. So
No,
for the cutting of 4%, oh, is he? If we would decrease our operations by 4% of my budget is $4,400 roughly. And I would propose we just cut this from professional services. It would just mean that we wouldn't be able to offer as many employee trainings, which was just the program we had started this year.
Cut down to how much, Robin?
4,400.
A total of that on the budget?
Oh, sorry. Cut 4,400 from the 30,000.
Cut for it. Okay. Thank you, Robin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you don't have any CIP projects. Overtime, you don't have any overtime. Well, yes, you do. Okay, overtime.
Yeah, so I was originally at 1,000. I had already reduced it to 500. So if we eliminate it altogether, I would have only be able to offer my employees comp time.
Thank you. Any questions from the council?
Just thank you, Robin.
Forgive me if you already said this, but can you just tell me what employees assistance is? I'm not familiar.
Sorry, you were cutting out, but were you asking about employee assistance?
Yeah, just what employees assistance entails.
Yeah, so we have an employee assistance program. It's through a local company called Blomquist Hale. They offer, it's free counseling services for mental health, finance. They offer free trainings to our employees. I believe the chief with the fire department is implementing a wellness program for his fire staff for their mental well-being. It's totally anonymous. They don't have to pay anything for it. They call 24/7, get assistance from this program.
That is not, again, that's not a new cost. That was over in non-departmental, and it's been moved over to HR because it does benefit every employee of the city.
Thank you. I remember the chief talking about it, but didn't recognize it when it popped back up. So thank you.
Councilmember Turner.
Yes. Yes, Doug?
Robin came prepared in case you had any questions about benefits. If any of you have any questions about benefits or personnel issues citywide that you'd like to ask. Robin also, I know, wanted to just make you aware of what impacts there would be in suspending a step plan to mid-year, just so that you understand how it works, if you would like her to talk about that.
I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Since the step plan is new, I just wanted to explain employees' step dates occur on their anniversary. So it's not every July that employees are moving to the next step. It's the date of when they were hired or their date of their promotion. So this morning when I heard maybe tabling the step increases till January, I just thought I'd explain to you what that would mean is that between July of this year and December 31st, actually out of the 269 employees that are still on the step plan moving and are not redlined, 192 of those their step date occurs between July 1st and December 31st. And 77 of those are from January to June. So by nature of the step plan, you could not fund a partial step plan. because it would not be fair to move just 77 employees on their step date at the 6-month mark. You would have to retroactively apply it to the 192 that had were due for a step increase in the prior 6 months.
So then it would need to be suspended for a year. Would that, rather than 6 months, it wouldn't work, right?
Right. So I see that it would need to be funded for the full year, or not at all, because it's not a 6-month program.
Okay, that's helpful. Any questions about that?
How many employees does that affect?
Yeah, so there's 269 of the full-time employees that are not redlined.
I have two, if I might. First, on the overtime, I think it's important that you keep a minimum overtime budget in case of emergencies. You've already cut yours in half. I think that's commendable. And then the second thing, do we ever, on benefits, do we ever put those out for bid? When does that happen? I guess that's my question. How do we get the health care? Is it up for bid? When is it up for bid?
So I've just been, my office has just been managing it. We haven't had a broker. I looked into brokerage services and they're quite expensive. And then we had some heavy hit areas. There were a few years where we had some really bad claims. So the idea of taking it out to bid wasn't great, because we wanted to show that we had 3 good solid years of trending downward. So we had that for a couple of years, and then we just spiked again. It's not something out of the question. We could certainly go out to bid again, and I look at that every time. I was running through a survey with other cities recently, and our rates are right in line with what other cities are seeing. I've seen their dental increase and their medical increase are right on trend with ours.
Thank you. I knew you had it under control.
Any other questions for Robin? Okay, Robin, would you discuss any other concerns that you might have?
No, I just wanted to discuss the step plan with you, and I know others probably have expressed their concerns with it. About we appreciate everything to keep all the full timers employed. Everyone really appreciates that. It also would be great if we could find a way to fund the step plan. It's been great. I was here through the whole downturn, 2008, 2009. And it wasn't fun, and recruiting and having, Murray City be a training ground for many departments, and many employees just jumping ship for a little bit of money here and there, especially in some of the industries where they could go to the private sector. And it would be sad to fall behind where this is just newly implemented over the past 2 years, and it's been a great asset to the city. So I wanted to throw that in there. So.
Thank you, Robin. Any other questions, comments for Robin?
So what did we have before the step plan? Because in these conversations, we just asked if there has been a step plan, or that there was one during the recession, or not one during the recession. So was there anything implemented after the recession to the 2-year mark, or what?
Yeah. So everybody it was a grade system. And so every year you would move within the grade, just depending on what the merit increases were set for the year. So once the recession hit, there were no COLAs and no merits given. So you just stayed at your percentage, and everybody just kind of fell to the bottom of their range, and stayed there for several years. And now, sorry.
No, you're fine. Thank you for that. Could you kind of explain what could happen possibly if we did do a freeze on the step system? if let's say we did it for a year, would that decrease or put people on the bottom of the list if we were to do that? Just kind of give a little bit more of it. If the worst case scenario that it was paused, what it could do for the next year. If they're aware of that.
You know, the biggest thing probably is morale, and are people going to leave for 1 year of a stagnant step plan? I don't know. I guess the worry is that it would be frozen for multiple years. And then we would just have to be very cautious if we hired people in where we hire them into the step plan to not cause a new compression problem that we've had in the past. So.
Okay, thank you. So would it put, that was the other concern I had, was if, let's say we did implement it where it would put new hires at and not create just, ill feelings on that part is my biggest concern.
Yeah, it just tends to happen. So if someone's not progressing up and then you're staying at the bottom of your range, your step 0, and you're getting these people hired in at step 0 and you're hitting your 1.5 year mark. And then eventually you both move your steps at the same time, but you still have 1 year of employment on them. That's where your compression problem comes in. So
one could be, if I was here for 5 years, I'm at step 3. New guy comes in, they're at step 0, but for 2 years or 3 years, they didn't go anywhere. This guy, then they would be at the same marker once the freeze was released, is what I'm understanding, correct?
Yeah, it just depends if you freeze it or if you, like we had to do here, is you had to re-step everyone out based on their year. So then you had this greater increase because you tried to move them to their exact year. You tried to restore them to the accurate position they should have been on the scale had you not had these freezes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I really appreciate everything everyone is sharing about how the impact can be long-term with the step plans, with hiring people. And I think what concerns me at this point is that for the 2008 recession, it was very linear as far as the recession and the recovery. And with the COVID-19, with the coronavirus pandemic, I think what I'm reading in a lot of articles and information is that it's not going to be linear, right? That we could have a surge 2 weeks from now because people just loosened up, and then it could get better, and then kids go back to school and we have a surge. And then we hit the winter, and with flu rates, we could have another surge. And so with that and the potential back and forth makes me a little bit more nervous. The step plan increase was a $311,000. Oh, my earring just jumped out of my head. $311,087 item on the list. Another item that I had looked at was a possible freeze or suspension of sick leave payout. That was a $204,783. From an HR standpoint, what implications do you see for that type of thing instead? That could maybe we wouldn't have to be as nervous at 6 months of reinstating and having to wait a year, not 18 months, but something that would still not be great. I mean, I hate looking at any benefits for any employees, but again, we're just really nervous about making sure our reserves can last as many years as possible if this doesn't improve as quickly as we hope. But Robin, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
So you're asking what about the sick leave payout if we eliminated that?
If we froze the payout of it, if that's just, we can implement that at any time again, if things look great in 6 months, or if that's something that also is tied annually and what that looks like.
I'm not sure where that number, Brenda, did you do the sick leave freezing? That's retirement. So I'm not sure what's based on.
The sick leave payout, that one, what they're talking about is the 24 hours of sick leave that we get paid out when Black Friday that everybody mostly counts on for Christmas presents, but that's their issue. That's a one-time thing. It could possibly be done some other time of the year. That affects every single full-time employee that has over 200 hours of earned sick leave. It also keeps our liability down a little bit, but that's not an important consideration for this particular conversation. But yeah, you can do that at any given time.
Okay, so I didn't know which sick leave we were talking about. So that one is something we made mandatory only because with Utah retirement systems, that 24 hours of sick leave payout that we get every year calculates towards your highest 3 years towards retirement. So that is something we opted with Utah retirement systems that we were going to do as a mandatory benefit here with the city. So I don't know that we could discontinue doing that, but like Brenda said, maybe you could push that off to a later date.
Thank you. I didn't mean to ambush you with numbers on a topic we hadn't talked about previously.
Kat, did you want to put that on contingency? Did you want to talk about that further?
If other people would be interested in talking about it as a different option, a different route, if we could put that on, Jan.
Can I ask something? I don't know. Is that tied in? Is that payout tied into the state retirement? Are we contractually bound in some way to do that?
I would have to look into that if we have a contract, what kind of thing we've officially stated to them that it was mandatory. I don't know if we could tell them we just froze it for 1 year. It's just something I would need to look into.
Okay, I think it'd be helpful if you could look into that, Robin, and bring us some more information on Friday when we have it. Okay, and kind of coordinate with Jan.
Sure.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Hey, Robin, thank you. We appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.
Take care and be safe. Okay, we're at Murray City Employee Association. Jackie Sadler. Jackie, are you there?
I am here, yes.
Great, it's good to see you.
Good to be here with you guys. Chelsea's here with me too as vice president, so making sure I don't say anything wrong. Okay, I wanted to start by saying thank you for letting us be here today and for reaching out to us and having open lines of communication with the employees and council members and the mayor's office. It's been very helpful, and we want to keep that going and keep those communications. And so we have a letter for you, and I will send it to Jan so that she can email it to all of the council members and to the mayor's office, or I could do it to the mayor's office. But it says, the Murray City Employees Association would like to submit this letter with a few thoughts that we hope will be taken into consideration when adopting the upcoming budget for the fiscal year 2021. In these unprecedented times of COVID-19, we understand you are facing many issues with the unknown effects on our economy. As employees, we want you to do what is best for the city to run smoothly. Similarly, we want to know that you are doing everything in your power to compensate us fairly for our hard work and service to Murray City. We are grateful to know that maintaining the current workforce is the top priority. And of course, with that goes with all the services that we provide to the city. We are grateful for all the effort and funds that are expended to ensure that the employees are taken care of, especially during these difficult times. We appreciate any efforts focused directly on employees and their well-being, including extra benefits that you've been able to give us, such as healthcare, tuition reimbursements, paid holidays, etc. It is our understanding that the cost of living adjustment may not be a possibility this year, but that the necessary efforts and adjustments are being made to ensure that the recently formed STEP plan will continue to be funded. Employee morale and retention is as crucial as any other budget item, and we believe the long-term effect of not making compensation a high priority will be catastrophic to retaining our quality employee workforce. Just kind of what Robin was just talking about at the end of there when you guys were discussing the STEP plan. We thank you for your efforts to provide increased communication with the employees and hope this trend continues. The purpose of the MCEA is for enacting a more harmonious working relationship among all employees and elected officials. We are open to your suggestions to help us bridge this gap. Please continue to keep us informed on changes and proposed changes, as this will help enact a more harmonious working relationship. We appreciate your continued support in all Murray City employees, the MCEA, and your participation in our functions and events. So we just like to say thank you. We know this is a hard time, and I did listen to Brenda yesterday when she was talking with the maintaining our workforce as the highest priority, and then keeping the services that we offer going as strong as well, because we do have a lot of services, and Murray's good for that. And we have a lot of citizens to take care of. And so with that, we know that times are hard, and we are very grateful that we haven't had to have layoffs. And what she said yesterday with the ones in the parks and rec and the senior center, they're still job attached, that they can still come back as soon as we open those facilities, and that they'll still be able to have a job here with Murray City. Any questions for me?
Just thank you for that letter.
You're welcome.
Yes, I agree. Thank you for that letter. We appreciate it.
Yes. Anything else for Jackie? All right. Thank you so much for being here and for all that you do for our employees.
You're welcome. We are still trying to find a way to figure out what our plans and events are for the rest of the year. So we have our summer party that we're supposed to have in June, but we'll probably be canceling that due to all the restrictions and everything. So we'll keep you guys informed of what we decide to do.
Okay. Thank you, and take care and be safe.
You're welcome. You too.
Okay.
Diane?
Yes.
Before we end, can I finish on something? I think we're just about done unless anybody has any more questions for Jackie. Okay. I'm planning on taking all of these numbers that I will get from the department heads and adding them up so you know what the savings are. Just as a reminder, in the book, the estimated actual is probably the worst case scenario on how we're going to end next year or this year, this coming year, because every one of the department heads said that they are going to save more money than I have said they were going to save in here. So that's one thing. The other thing is I went through, and I can't give you the final number because I haven't double checked my new employee work yet, but she went through and multiplied how many payrolls we have left to come up with an estimate based on the last payroll we did of what we are going to save in payroll. And if she's right, it's between $1 million and $1.7 million. So I'm thinking that just the fact we got that big rebate from PEHP, we've got some money back as usual from workers' comp. I don't know what they're going to do next year. That's why we don't budget for them to send us a dividend every year, because we don't know if they're going to. We've gotten some other stuff, and we've had open positions for quite a while. So we do have some savings in our salaries right now from this year. And I don't know if you got this, but if we don't have fund days, but you leave fund days in the budget, they're not going to spend that money. It's just going to sit there, roll into reserves next year. They do that with all kinds of things. They do that with road salt. They do that with, everything. they don't just spend it because it's in the budget. That's where all these savings are coming from. And so you just got to kind of keep that in mind, that even if you budget it, doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to spend it. It does provide them some flexibility. But I will know probably tomorrow. My plan is to get you a list of everything they said that they would save and summarize it for you, because there's no way anybody could have written that all down and got it right. So I'll get a list, and then I will double check these payroll numbers to kind of give you an idea of where the payroll might end up. So we might actually end up at, it depends. We could end up at 21, 22. We could even end up at 24% again. I don't know of what our reserves, and we won't know until August for sure. But just kind of let you know that there is going to be a big savings in that payroll, and it would be really a shame from my perspective with that great unknown for next year, and to not fund the step plan for that 1 year, have it all work out, and now we've got this problem. Might be a better idea to use reserves the first year, and all the employees, as they watch the year goes by, we will know whether that step plan is going to be funded the next year, because we'll know what COVID's doing, rather than a 2-month, oh no, we've panicked. It will be a whole year of knowing what COVID's going to do to our budget. And $300,000, $377 of the general fund, we'll find it somewhere if we need to fund it. But I think we can fund it on the savings we're going to make this year, and just use the reserves that 1 year, and then see the next year where we're at, and then do the hard things. You could cut the step plan. There's all kinds of things we could look at. We'll reshop the insurance, look at changing the benefit ratio. Maybe the employees pay 80 or pay 20% instead of 15. All of that kind of stuff. Everything will be on the table next year if it looks like this. But we don't know. It could be coming back. It could be awful. We don't know. And it would be real shame to just ruin the 2 years and almost 3 years of good feelings we have with the employees on a great big unknown. So that's my thought. It's up to you. You guys can do whatever you want, and I will write the budget however you want. Friday, we're going to have to go pretty much. That's why I'm creating the list and say yes or no to all these cuts, so I can review the book over the weekend. So, and figure out where we're going to end up. So, just that will be on your contingency. It's really not a contingency. This is what we need to do type thing. So I can get an agreement from all of you, because you all have ideas, and I don't want to be sitting in council meeting and have 3 of you decide that you don't like what happened, and then I have to start again. So that'll be part of Friday. But anyway, those are my thoughts. We've saved a lot of money, and I'll add them all up for you so that you can kind of, just with the mayor saying, don't spend money, the savings that have happened. So that's my thoughts. Take them or leave them. But that's what I'm closing with. And I will send you all that information in an email. And once I get it compiled, I haven't quite compiled it yet.
Thanks, Brenda. I appreciate that, and I look forward to seeing those numbers. I really appreciate your.
I agree, Brenda. Thank you. We'll take your comments and whatever you can do. I don't think any of us want to give up the step plan. I think, and we even more realize, the importance of it. So if there's any way we can get around and not have to dip into reserves so much, I think we would all be happy to do that. But I'll put it to the council and tell me what you think. Give me your ideas, please.
I just want to say we owe it to our citizens as well to really have these hard conversations. As easy as it is to say that we're fine, and you know better than me, Brenda, and that's for sure. But we owe it to the citizens to really have these hard conversations and to take a look at the budget in a deeper level and really understand from our staff too what their concerns are. So we really appreciate all the work that everybody's doing. I wouldn't be where I'm at if I wasn't for the citizens that got me here. And I really need to keep that in consideration. And I think in the long run, or in the short term, we'll find the right solution for now. And I think, like I said, the budget a little bit better. And if we could see those numbers, I think that will help.
Well, one option we have is we have the 0.2 tax, the 0.2 sales tax that we send the majority of it to capital projects. Right now, I've pulled out the fire department's payment on their brand new building, which is beautiful, and a little bit more to keep our reserves at 14. I can decrease that $377,000. There you go. You've now funded your step plan. We have a little bit less in the capital projects fund for future capital projects, but those are all big unknowns anyway. And that's one way you can fund it this year. So we get one more year, we get more into the COVID, figure out what's going on, then we'll know what capital projects we can do in the future. We'll have a better idea. Right now, we're basically basing everything on the great unknown. Even the scientists that are studying the disease, I am sure there are going to be spikes. I'm sure they're right about that. What I'm not sure of is if the government response is going to be shut us all down again. The government response may be, well, we now have PPE, we now have all the stuff we have to take care of the sick people, the people who do get sick. I don't know what their response is going to be. I hope it's not to shut us all down again. But then again, if that's going to save lives, that's a big catch-22. I feel so wishy-washy about that whole thing. So that's one way we can fund it. I can do that with 5 seconds. We can solve that particular part. The combined reserves between the two funds will be less, but the general fund will sit at I can fund it with the 0.2 sales tax for this particular year. I don't want to do it for every year because that is going to go away in 2030 and we can't count on it. But 1 year, it's a big deal. It's not a deal killer. It's not going to kill the general fund or the capital projects fund to do that.
If you could crunch those numbers for us, that would be really helpful, and have them for us on Friday.
I look at everyone's faces before I want to say anything. Make sure, Kat, you have that look like you wanted to say something, and I'm thinking like, I'm going to be quiet and let Kat go first.
Brett, do you have a comment?
Maybe I misread her. Okay. I just want to say that was awesome. And I agree with Diane, crunch those numbers, because that would be huge for me to be able to look at that. And I just want to say thanks to all the department heads. My goodness. And like Diane said, or Dale, whoever said it yesterday, that the exercise, wow. I mean, this has been a good exercise for me. Maybe I won't speak for anybody else, but it's been good for me to be able to see what the department heads are able to do and what they're willing to do. And we already knew with the CIP what they're willing to do. I'm just wondering if I'd like to hear from the mayor if he has any comments. And maybe Diane, you were going to do that after or whatever.
Well, I can if you want. Mayor, do you have something that you would like to say?
Thank you. Yeah, I want to express appreciation also to my department head. They have worked very hard on this. I think it would have been as we went through this exercise, I'd like to look at numbers I think it would have been a little easier to shoot at numbers instead of getting so deep into the weeds in this discussion. But I think it's served its purpose. We do have those numbers for you for Friday. Doug already has them, Brenda, so don't duplicate your work on that. But I just want to say that there's been a lot of really great points brought up here today. We don't know what we're up against. We do know this is different than the last recession, and but we don't know what that means, right? So, but I do want to thank you for putting in the work, because this is a tough budget, and having spent the time on the council, I understand where you are and where you're coming from. So thank you for putting in the work. I know you're sick of hearing about the STEP plan, but I think if there's any way that we can save it, I think Brenda said it well. So I look forward to the discussion on Friday. And if you have any questions between now and Friday, please feel free to contact Brenda or my office, and we'll assist you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Other council members that would like to comment?
I just want to say thank you. I know that, as Mayor said, we got into the weeds, but I think it was so important to like the due process, to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure we protect the employees, protect our services, continue providing them, and just be able to really feel confident in telling our residents and community that we did everything we could to do the best we can with the information we have today, which, everyone has said is uncertain at best. But I really just appreciate everyone's patience as we worked through this process. And I hope the department heads know that we trust them and value our employees so much, as I've watched so many of my family members and friends be laid off in the last several months who don't work for cities or states, and just not taking anything for granted and trying to make sure that we're being diligent and careful. And so I hope they know that that's the intent behind it. While really, really valuing them. So thank you just everyone for your participation.
Great, thanks, Kat. Well said. Jan?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, are you, you know what we want on the contingency list? Do you have any questions?
I think I have everything. I'll be happy to go through it if you'd like for me to.
Okay, I think that'd be good.
Okay. I have for citywide, the STEP plan increases. I did have the professional services in streets. That was the amount that Danny did send an explanation for. I don't know if you still want to discuss that. I can leave it on. On the enterprise funds, we wanted to talk about the 4% decreases and determine whether or not you were going to require that out of those funds. In all departments, look at training for certifications in that list. Power transfer, just the amount transferred to the general fund.
Can I ask what the question is about the power transfer? Because until you said that, I had no idea anybody was thinking about doing anything with that.
It came up earlier today, Brenda.
All she said was power transfer. What was the question about it?
I didn't write down a question.
I know. What is the question about it?
Well, I think if we did a transfer from the power, if that would help to reduce the reserves.
We
increase the reserve. Increase.
You mean an additional amount, right?
We have to notice that.
Right.
So we've been noticing that since April. So
We just started budget, Brenda. I don't know how that works.
I know. I'm telling you, we have
Second notice.
to notice that. I'm just telling you, we have to notice that. And that would help the reserves, but I'm not sure that you want to start with some money from the power department.
It's a discussion item, okay?
Yep.
Yeah, just going to talk about it.
Council travel, council benefits, council meals, citywide sick leave payout. And Robin's going to report on that. That's everything I have. Besides, Brenda's going to get us the report on what the 4% reductions are and what the travel reductions are.
Are there any other additions from the council? Anyone want to add anything else to Friday's discussion?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. This is not easy. I know it's not easy for any of us, but I really appreciate your hanging in there and your feedback and your support. So we'll see you Friday on Zoom.
What time? Remind me, Diane.
1 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. I could have looked, but I'm over there thinking, what time? All right. Thank you. We appreciate Diane. Thank you.
All right.
Brenda raising her hand?
No, just bye.
Thanks, Brenda.
Thank you.
Okay, take care all.